Go now! Flank left!
Throw the spear!
The Clovis Culture, 13,000 years ago. The first great hunters of ancient America.
Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a silence so profound it feels like the world is holding its breath. This isn't the quiet of a library or a deserted street at midnight. This is a primordial silence, a quiet that has reigned for millennia. This is North America, long before the first human footprints marked its soil. Welcome to a world untouched, a continent slumbering under the vast, indifferent sky of the late Pleistocene. Picture a landscape of immense scale, a canvas painted with the raw, untamed colors of nature. Vast grasslands, a sea of green and gold, ripple under a relentless wind that has known no obstacle for 1,000 miles. This is the Great Mammoth Steppe, an ecosystem now lost to time. It stretches from the icy fringes of the north to the warmer, sun-drenched south, a colossal pasture for colossal beasts. Here, herds of Columbian mammoths, titans of the Ice Age, move like walking mountains. Their shaggy coats, thick against the chill, brush against the tall grasses as they tear up mouthfuls with their powerful trunks. Their tusks, elegant and deadly curves of ivory, glint in the pale sunlight. Listen closely. Can you hear it? The deep, rumbling calls that echo across the plains. A language of giants in a land of giants. They are the architects of this world, their immense weight and grazing habits shaping the very terrain they walk upon. But they are not alone. Sharing these endless plains are other megafauna, a cast of creatures straight from a forgotten epic. Herds of ancient bison, larger and with more formidable horns than their modern descendants, graze peacefully. Their sheer numbers are testament to the richness of the land. Nearby, gentle ground sloths, some as tall as a giraffe when standing on their hind legs, methodically strip leaves from trees. Their movements slow and deliberate, as if they have all the time in the world. And in a way, they do. Look closer, into the scattered woodlands and along the riverbanks. The air is thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Here, the shadows hold secrets. A flicker of movement reveals a dire wolf pack on the prow. They are larger, more robust than any wolf you know, with bone-crushing jaws. They move with a coordinated intelligence, a silent, deadly ballet across the landscape. They are the ever-present pressure, the force that keeps the herds alert and strong. And then there is the apex predator, the ghost of the grasslands, the saber-toothed cat, Smilodon. It's not a creature of speed, but of ambush and overwhelming power. Imagine it lying in wait, its muscular body coiled like a spring in the tall grass. Its most terrifying feature, those iconic 9-inch canine teeth, are not for show. They are precision tools designed for a swift, fatal strike to the throat of its prey. A sudden explosion of motion, a brief, violent struggle, and then silence returns, broken only by the sounds of the feast. The rivers and lakes are arteries of life in this quiet continent. They teem with fish, their waters crystal clear, untouched by pollution. Giant beavers, the size of black bears, construct massive dams, creating wetlands that support a whole new web of life. Graceful, long-legged camels, relatives of those now found in Asia and Africa, elegantly sip from the water's edge, their large eyes scanning the horizon for danger. Herds of wild horses, native to this continent, thunder across the plains, their manes flying in the wind, a symbol of the untamed freedom that defines this era. Fly higher, let your mind's eye soar like the massive teratones, a condor-like bird with a wingspan stretching over 12 feet. From this vantage point, you see the true scale of the wilderness. Unbroken forests stretch to the horizon in the east, a dense canopy of green. To the west, jagged, snow-capped mountains claw at the sky, their peaks glistening like shards of glass. Glaciers, immense rivers of ice, still cling to the northern latitudes, remnants of the Ice Age's peak. Their slow, grinding retreat carves out valleys and fills great lakes, sculpting the land with unimaginable force. There are no roads, no cities, no fences, no smoke from campfires, no trails worn by human feet. The only paths are those made by migrating herds, ancient highways of instinct etched into the earth. The only sounds are the calls of animals, the rush of the wind, the crack of ice, and the distant rumble of a thunderstorm. It is a world of raw, unfiltered nature, a complex and brutal symphony of life and death, playing out on a continental stage. This is the world just before the arrival of a new, revolutionary force, a creature unlike any other, armed not with massive claws or thick hides, but with a keen mind and an adaptable nature. Humanity is coming. The Clovis people, with their distinctive, fluted spear points, are on the horizon, poised to step into this ancient, silent world. But for now, in this moment, there is only the quiet, the sleepy, ancient mood of a continent that has not yet known the sound of a human voice. It is a world of giants, a world of immense beauty and savage grace, a world on the very cusp of a profound and irreversible change. Let this image of a pristine, wild North America settle in your mind. Feel the silence, witness the majesty, and remember the world as it was. This was the Earth in its primeval state, a quiet continent, waiting. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. It's a story that belongs to all of us. If you found this glimpse into the deep past as fascinating as I do, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There are so many more stories to uncover together. We'll see you in the next chapter. Welcome back to our journey through human history. Today, we're turning back the clock about 13,000 years to a time when our planet was undergoing a radical transformation. This is Chapter 2, the end of the Ice Age. Imagine a world locked in a deep freeze. For thousands of years, colossal ice sheets, some over a mile thick, blanketed much of the northern hemisphere. Places like modern-day New York, London, and Chicago were buried under a relentless, frozen expanse. This was the peak of the last ice age, a harsh and unforgiving environment. But change was on the horizon. A change so profound it would not only reshape the Earth's geography, but also set the stage for one of the greatest migration stories in human history. The first whispers of this change began as a slow, almost imperceptible warming. The planet's orbit shifted slightly, its tilt wobbled, and solar radiation intensified. These subtle astronomical cycles triggered a global thaw. The great ice sheets, which had held dominion for millennia, began to lose their grip. Think of it like a giant, planetary-scale sigh of relief as the Earth started to warm up. This wasn't an overnight event. It was a process that unfolded over centuries, marked by fits and starts. There were periods of rapid melting, followed by brief returns to colder conditions. But the overall trend was undeniable. The ice was in retreat. As these immense glaciers began to melt, they released unfathomable volumes of water. Picture trillions of tons of ice turning into liquid. This meltwater had to go somewhere. It carved its way through the landscape, creating new, powerful river systems. Rivers that are familiar to us today, like the Mississippi and the Missouri in North America, or the Rhine and the Thames in Europe, began to take on their modern forms, fed by the glacial runoff. These weren't gentle streams. They were roaring torrents, carrying massive amounts of sediment and debris. They scoured valleys, deposited fertile silt, and created vast floodplains. The sound must have been deafening, a constant roar of cracking ice and rushing water, the soundtrack of a world being reborn. The retreat of the glaciers also had another dramatic effect. It literally lifted a great weight off the Earth's crust. As the ice disappeared, the land beneath, which had been compressed for thousands of years, began to rebound upwards in a process called isostatic rebound. This geological uplift further altered the landscape, creating new coastlines and changing the flow of rivers. Simultaneously, all that meltwater pouring into the oceans caused global sea levels to rise dramatically. Coastlines that had extended far out into the sea were submerged. Islands were formed, and continents were separated. The world map as we know it was beginning to emerge from its icy shell. So, we have a warming climate, retreating glaciers, newly formed rivers, and rising sea levels. But what did this mean for our ancestors? For the small, nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers who had survived the harshest conditions of the Ice Age, this was a world of new opportunities. The most significant of these opportunities was the opening of new lands. As the ice sheets receded, They unveiled vast territories that had been inaccessible for generations. These were pristine landscapes, untouched by humans. Lush grasslands began to replace the barren tundra, and forests of birch and pine followed in their wake. This new vegetation supported a burgeoning animal population. Herds of megafauna, mammoths, mastodons, giant bison, and wild horses moved into these newly available territories, following the expanding grasslands. And where the animals went, the humans followed. For our ancestors, these herds represented a mobile food source, a walking pantry. Survival depended on following them. This brings us to one of the most incredible chapters in human migration: the peopling of the Americas. During the Ice Age, so much of the world's water was locked up in glaciers that sea levels were much lower than they are today. This exposed a land bridge, known as Beringia, connecting modern-day Siberia and Asia with Alaska and North America. For thousands of years, this land bridge was a viable passageway. It wasn't a narrow, icy corridor, but a vast, subcontinent-sized region of cold, dry grassland, teeming with life. It was here that groups of people from Asia lived for generations, adapting to the Arctic environment. However, the path south into the rest of the Americas was blocked. Two massive ice sheets, the Laurentide and the Cordilleran, covered most of Canada, meeting in the middle and forming an impenetrable wall of ice. For a long time, it seemed the journey had reached a dead end. But as the planet warmed and the glaciers began to melt around 13,000 years ago, something remarkable happened. A corridor began to open up between these two melting ice sheets. This ice-free corridor was a narrow, challenging route, likely still cold and barren at first. But it was a path forward, driven by the need to follow the migrating herds and the innate human desire to explore what lies beyond the horizon. Small groups of people ventured into this new opening. They were the pioneers, the first humans to set foot in the vast, unpopulated continents of North and South America. The end of the Ice Age wasn't just a climatic event. It was the catalyst that unlocked a new world. It was a time of immense challenge, but also of unparalleled opportunity. The retreat of the ice was a green light from nature, signaling that new lands were ready for settlement. It allowed our ancestors to push the boundaries of the known world, to populate new continents, and to lay the foundations for the civilizations that would one day arise in the Americas. This monumental migration, made possible by the Great Thaw, is a powerful testament to human resilience and adaptability. Our ancestors didn't just survive the Ice Age. They seized the moment its grip loosened, turning a global climate shift into the next great chapter of our shared human story. Thank you so much for joining me on this step back in time. It's truly fascinating to see how the planet's own cycles shaped our destiny. If you enjoyed this exploration, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next chapter. We'd love to have you along for the entire journey. See you next time. Have you ever stood on a coastline, looked out at the vast ocean, and wondered what lies beyond the horizon? What if I told you that where the icy waters of the Bering Strait now churn, there once existed a massive, lost subcontinent, a bridge of land connecting to worlds, Asia and America? This wasn't a narrow causeway, but a sprawling, 1,000-mile-wide expanse called Bering. Today, we're journeying back in time, over 20,000 years ago, to walk alongside the first people who set foot in the Americas. This is the story of the first footsteps across Bering. To truly grasp this epic journey, we first need to understand the world they lived in. It was the last glacial maxima, an ice age. Colossal sheets of ice, miles thick, covered much of North America, Europe, and Asia. This immense amount of frozen water dramatically lowered global sea levels by as much as 400 feet. The shallow seafloor between modern-day Siberia and Alaska emerged from the waves, creating the vast, subarctic plain of Bering. Forget any image of a barren, icy wasteland. Beringia was a unique ecosystem, often called the Mammoth Steppe. It was a cold, dry, and windy landscape, but it wasn't buried in snow. Instead, it was covered in a rich carpet of grasses, herbs, and low-lying shrubs. Think of it as a subarctic savanna. This environment was incredibly productive, capable of supporting vast herds of large animals. And what animals they were. This was the age of megafauna. Imagine looking out across the plains and seeing herds of woolly mammoths, their massive tusks curving towards the sky. You'd see lumbering woolly rhinos, giant ground sloths, and steppe bison with horns spanning 6 feet. Herds of wild horses and caribou migrated across the landscape, while predators like the fearsome scimitar-toothed cat, giant short-faced bears, and packs of dire wolves stalked them in the shadows. For the humans who lived there, Beringia was both a formidable challenge and a land of incredible opportunity, teeming with life. So, who were these people? They weren't explorers setting out to conquer a new continent. They were families. Small, tight-knit bands of hunter-gatherers whose ancestors had adapted for millennia to the harsh environments of Siberia. Their entire world revolved around the rhythms of nature and the movement of the animals they depended on for survival. Their lives were a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. They were master artisans of survival. Their clothing wasn't just for warmth. It was a sophisticated, layered system. Picture garments expertly stitched from animal hides, using bone needles and sinew thread lined with fur for insulation. Boots, mittens, and hoods protected them from the biting winds and relentless cold. Their shelters were likely semi-subterranean pit houses or sturdy tents made from mammoth bones and hides, designed to withstand the harsh Beringian climate. Their toolkit was a marvel of Stone Age technology. They crafted razor-sharp stone spear points for hunting, scrapers for cleaning hides, and burins for carving bone and ivory. These weren't just crude rocks. They were finely flaked, pressure-shipped implements, each designed for a specific purpose. This technology, passed down through generations, was the key to their success in this demanding world. The journey across Beringia wasn't a single, purposeful march. It was a slow generational drift. These weren't migrants in the modern sense. They were simply people following their food. Imagine a small family group. Their scouts spot a herd of bison grazing eastward into new territory they've never seen. So, the group packs up its mobile camp and follows. They might stay in that new valley for a season, or a generation, learning its nuances, its water sources, and its best hunting grounds. Their children would be born in this new place, knowing it as home. And when those children grew up, they might follow another herd of caribou or horses a little further east. It was an unhurried, almost imperceptible expansion, a human tide trickling across the landscape over thousands of years. They were not aware they were entering a new hemisphere, a new world. For them, it was just the next valley, the next hunting ground, the next horizon over the hill. They were simply extending their homeland, one step at a time. For a long time, scientists believed this was a relatively quick process, but recent genetic and archaeological evidence suggests a fascinating twist in the story. The Beringian standstill. It appears that the ancestors of Native Americans may have lived in isolation on the Beringian land bridge itself, for thousands of years perhaps. For as long as 10,000 years. Why did they wait? It's likely that, while Beringia itself was habitable, their path forward into North America was blocked. 2 massive ice sheets, the Cordilleran in the west and the Laurentide in the east, covered most of Canada. These ice sheets were impassable barriers. So, the people of Beringia were essentially trapped on this lost subcontinent, a world unto themselves. During T's long standstill, they developed their own unique genetic and cultural identity, distinct from their Siberian ancestors. They adapted perfectly to their environment, living in the heart of Beringia, a population poised on the brink of a new world, waiting for the ice to yield. It was in this isolated crucible that the founding populations of the Americas were truly forged. Then, around 16,500 years ago, things began to change. The climate started to warm. The great ice sheets began to melt and retreat. As they did, 2 potential pathways into the Americas opened up. The first was an ice-free corridor that slowly appeared between the 2 melting glaciers, creating a passageway through what is now Alberta and British Columbia. For a long time, this was considered the primary route. However, a second, perhaps earlier, route has gained favor among scientists. The coastal route? As glaciers retreated, a narrow strip of coastline along the Pacific, rich in marine life, may have become accessible. These skilled hunters, already adapted to a coastal or near-coastal life, in Could have used boats, perhaps simple skin-on-frame vessels to hopscotch down the coast. They could have found ample food in the kelp forests and estuaries. Seals, sea lions, otters, shellfish, and seabirds. This kelp highway would have provided a reliable source of food and a much faster way to move south, bypassing the still treacherous interior. Regardless of the exact route, or whether they used one or both, the dam had broken. After millennia of waiting, the people of Beringia began to move, pushing into a land that no human had ever seen before. What they found was a world of staggering diversity and abundance. From the coastal rainforests of the Pacific Northwest to the Great Plains, teeming with bison. From the deserts of the Southwest to the jungles of Mesoamerica, they adapted with astonishing speed. Within just a few thousand years, a mere blink in geological time, these first peoples had spread from the Arctic to the southernmost tip of South America, Tierra del Fuego. This rapid expansion is one of the greatest feats of exploration in human history. They were the original pioneers, the true discoverers of the Americas. Every step they took was on new ground. Every river they crossed was unnamed. Every mountain they saw was a new feature on the face of the earth. The story of Beringia is a profound reminder of our shared human history. It's a story of courage, of incredible resilience in the face of unimaginable challenges, and of an unbreakable connection to the natural world. These ancient families, following the great herds across a lost land, were not just hunting for their next meal. Unbeknownst to them, they were carrying the spark of humanity into two vast, empty continents, laying the foundation for the magnificent and diverse cultures that would flourish there for millennia. Their footsteps were the first of countless to come, echoing across time from the icy plains of Beringia to the present day. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into our incredible human past. Let us know in the comments what part of this story amazed you the most. We'll see you in the next one. Welcome, Bike History Explorers. Last time, we left humanity poised on the edge of a new continent. Today, we journey with them as they take their first steps into the Americas, a land untouched by human hands, teeming with strange and colossal beasts. This is Chapter 4. Entering a New World. Imagine standing at the edge of the world. A vast frozen expanse before you. For the first Americans, this wasn't a choice. It was a necessity. As the last great ice age began to loosen its grip, the potential pathways into this new world opened up. Which one did they take? That's one of archaeology's most hotly debated questions. The first theory, and the one that held sway for decades, is the ice-free corridor. Picture this. Two massive ice sheets, the Laurentide and the Cordilleran, covering most of modern-day Canada. For thousands of years, they were a barrier. But around 13,000 years ago, as the climate warmed, a narrow, unglaciated strip of land began to open between them, like a parting of the seas. This corridor stretched from the Arctic down into the heart of North America, in what is now Alberta and Montana. Let's walk this path in our minds. The journey would have been anything but easy. This wasn't a lush, welcoming highway. It was a harsh, stark landscape. The air would be thin and bitingly cold. Underfoot, the ground would be a mix of gravelly outwash plains and boggy wetlands, recently freed from the ice. Vegetation would be sparse, mostly hardy grasses, sedges, and dwarf willows, struggling to gain a foothold in the new soil. Think of the modern Siberian tundra, and you're getting close. Survival here depended on relentless opportunism. The people traveling this corridor would have been expert hunters, clothed in warm animal hides, their lives intertwined with the rhythm of migrating herds. They would have followed animals like the steppe bison, woolly mammoths, and caribou that were also colonizing this new passage. Their toolkit would be lightweight and essential. Razor-sharp stone, spear points, scrapers for cleaning hides, and needles carved from bone. Every piece of their technology was a testament to generations of accumulated knowledge on how to survive in the harshest of environments. They wouldn't have sprinted through the corridor. This migration was a slow, generational creep. Families would move a few miles, set up camp, hunt, and then move again, always pushing south into unknown territory. The corridor itself was over 1,000 miles long. It might have taken centuries for people to travel its full length. Each bend in a river, each new valley, would have been a discovery, a new map being drawn in the minds of these pioneers. They were not just explorers. They were settlers, making a home in a world in constant flux. But there's a problem with the ice-free corridor theory. Mounting evidence suggests that the corridor might not have been biologically it couldn't support Lafontaine after people were already living south of the ice sheets. So, if they didn't come through the middle, how did they get there? This brings us to the second major theory, the Kelp Highway. This route proposes a coastal migration. Instead of trekking overland, these early people may have traveled down the Pacific coast, island hopping and moving along the shoreline in small, maneuverable watercraft. This could have happened much earlier, perhaps 16,000 years ago or even before. Picture a completely different journey. Instead of a bleak, frozen corridor, imagine a coastline rich with resources. The sea would have provided a bounty. Fish, seals, sea lions, otters, and abundant shellfish. The coastal forests, rich with sitka, spruce, and hemlock, would have offered wood for fires and shelters, and land animals for hunting. The key to this highway was kelp. Dense kelp forests hugged the Pacific coast from Asia all the way to South America, creating incredibly productive ecosystems. It's a ready-made pantry. People traveling this route would have been maritime specialists. Their skills would be in building boats, perhaps. Simple vessels made from animal skin stretched over a wooden frame and, navigating the complex and often treacherous coastal waters, they would have understood the tides, the currents, and the seasonal patterns of marine life. Their archaeological signature would be different. To not just large spear points for hunting megafauna, but smaller, more delicate tools like hooks, nets, and harpoons for catching marine resources. One of the challenges for archaeologists is that this ancient coastline is now deep underwater. As the glaciers melted, sea levels rose by hundreds of feet, submerging the very campsites and villages that could prove this theory. However, tantalizing clues are emerging. At sites like Monteverde in Chile, evidence of human occupation dates back over 14,500 years, predating the opening of the ice-free corridor. And on islands off the coast of California, archaeologists have found 13,000-year-old human remains and sophisticated maritime tools. These discoveries strongly suggest that people were living along the coast and were comfortable in a marine environment very early on. So, which theory is correct? The truth is, it's probably not an either-or situation. It's possible, even likely, that both routes were used. Perhaps one group of people came down the coast, while another, later group, ventured through the ice-free corridor once it opened up. The Americas might have been populated by multiple waves of migration from different founding groups. Regardless of the path they took, what they found was a world of wonders. South of the ice, North America was a land of giants. Vast plains, much like the Serengeti in Africa today, were filled with herds of incredible Ice Age animals, the megafauna. Imagine seeing a woolly mammoth for the first time, standing over 10 feet tall at the shoulder, with long, curved tusks and a shaggy coat of hair. These were not just animals, they were walking ecosystems. Herds of them would have thundered across the plains, their immense weight shaping the landscape. Then there were the mastodons, shorter and stockier than mammoths, who preferred browsing in forests and wetlands. You might encounter giant ground sloths, some as large as a modern elephant, rearing up on their hind legs to strip leaves from trees. Herds of ancient horses and camelsies. Camels were native to North America, grazed on the grasslands, and for every herbivore, there was a predator. The most fearsome was the saber-toothed cat, Smilodon, Fatalis *, with its iconic 7-inch-long canine teeth. It was a powerful ambush predator, built like a bear, designed to take down large prey. There were also American lions, larger than their African cousins today, and the giant short-faced bear, Arctides, Simos, *. This creature was a true monster. Standing on its hind legs, it could reach over 12 feet tall. It was the largest land carnivore of its time, a terrifyingly fast runner that could cover huge distances in search of a meal. For the first people, This was a world of immense opportunity and immense danger. Every hunt was a life-or-death gamble. Bringing down a bison or a mammoth meant a huge reward meat to feed the group for weeks. Hides for clothing and shelter, and bones and tusks for tools and art. But a failed hunt or a moment of carelessness could mean being trampled, gored, or becoming prey yourself. These early Americans, known to archaeologists as Paleo-Indians, quickly became master hunters. The most famous evidence of this is the Clovis point, a beautifully crafted, fluted spear point found all across North America, dating to around 13,000 years ago. These points were technologically sophisticated, deadly effective, and a hallmark of a culture that had adapted with incredible speed to this new environment. For a long time, Clovis people were thought to be the first Americans. But as we've discussed, we now know the story is much older and more complex. As they spread across the two continents, from the Arctic tundra to the forests of the east, the grasslands of the Great Plains, and down into the deserts of the southwest, these pioneers adapted. They learned the rhythms of the land, the habits of the animals, and the properties of the plants. They were not just passing through. They were creating a home, laying the foundations for the countless cultures and civilizations that would follow. Their journey, whether through ice or by sea, was one of the greatest chapters in human history, a testament to our species' incredible resilience, ingenuity, and unquenchable thirst for discovery. Next time, we'll explore what happened when these people met the megafauna. Did they hunt these giants to extinction, or was something else at play? The mystery of the Great Ice Age die-off is coming up in our next chapter. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey back in time. If you're enjoying this series, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next episode. We love hearing from you, so leave your questions and thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Let's rewind the clock. It's 1932. The world is in the grips of the Great Depression. Dust storms are swirling across the American heartland. But amidst the hardship and uncertainty, in a dusty corner of New Mexico, something is about to happen that will completely rewrite the story of America. Imagine a place called Blackwater Draw, near a small, unassuming town named Clovis. To most people, it's just arid landscape. But to a team of archaeologists, it's a treasure trove waiting to be unearthed. For years, scientists had debated when the first humans arrived in the Americas. The prevailing theory was that people had only been on the continent for a few thousand years. Any claims of older settlements were often dismissed, laughed out of academic circles. It was a scientific dogma, a wall of belief that seemed unbreakable. But all that was about to change. The team at Blackwater Draw, led by Edgar B. Howard from the University of Pennsylvania Museum, wasn't initially looking for human history. They were excavating the fossilized bones of long-extinct Ice Age giants, mammoths. Picture the scene. The sun beating down, the meticulous work of brushing away layers of earth, the sheer scale of the mammoth skeletons slowly emerging from their ancient slumber. It was already a significant paleontological find, but then they found something else. Something small, yet infinitely more explosive. Lying there, nestled right among the massive ribs of a Columbian mammoth, was a stone spear point. But this wasn't just any arrowhead. It was exquisitely crafted, a masterpiece of ancient technology. It was long, slender, with a characteristic channel, or flute, carved from its base. This wasn't a tool that had washed in later. Its position was undeniable. It was found in situ asterisk, directly associated with the mammoth bones. The implication was staggering, almost unbelievable. It was the prehistoric equivalent of finding a smoking gun. This single point, and others like it, found at the site, provided irrefutable proof. Ancient humans had not only coexisted with mammoths, they had hunted them. These weren't primitive scavengers. They were sophisticated, organized hunters, capable of taking down the largest land animals of the Ice Age. The spear points, which would soon be named Clovis Points after the nearby town, became the calling card of this previously unknown culture. The discovery sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. The scientific establishment, so certain in its timeline, was forced to confront this new, undeniable evidence. The layers of soil at Blackwater Draw told a clear story. The mammoth bones and the Clovis Points were sealed in a geological layer that could be dated, and when the dates came back, they were mind-blowing for the time. These hunters had been here at least 11,500 years ago, pushing back the known timeline of human presence in the Americas by thousands of years. Think about that for a moment. This discovery didn't just add a new chapter to American prehistory. It ripped up the old book and forced everyone to start writing a new one. The Clovis first theory was born. It proposed that the makers of these distinctive points were the very first people to populate the Americas, a wave of big-game hunters who swept across the continent with incredible speed. For decades, this would become the new orthodoxy, the baseline against which all other findings were measured. The site at Blackwater Draw became a pilgrimage for archaeologists. More excavations revealed an incredible sequence of human history. Below the lair with mammoth bones and Clovis points, there was nothing. Above it, they found different styles of points associated with bison bones, telling the story of how people adapted as the Ice Age megafauna died out and the environment changed. The site was like a perfectly preserved layer cake of deep time, with the Clovis discovery as its most profound and game-changing ingredient. These early people, now known as the Clovis culture, weren't just a local phenomenon. As archaeologists across North America re-examined their own collections and started looking for similar artifacts, a pattern emerged. Clovis points, or variations of them, were found from coast to coast, from the plains of Canada down into Mexico. It was evidence of a widespread, successful, and technologically advanced culture that had conquered a continent. They were the true pioneers, the first Americans. The image of the Clovis hunter, bravely facing down a towering mammoth with nothing but a stone-tipped spear, captured the public imagination. It became a powerful symbol of human resilience and ingenuity. These weren't just artifacts. They were the legacy of a people who had navigated a world we can barely imagine, a world of glaciers, giant sloths, and saber-toothed cats. They were the ancestors of all subsequent Native American cultures, or so it seemed. The Clovis discovery was a monumental achievement, a paradigm shift that redefined our understanding of the past. It established a new timeline, a new narrative, and a new hero in the story of the Americas. The Clovis people. For nearly 70 years, the Clovis first model reigned supreme. It was the definitive answer to the question of who got here first. But science is never truly settled, and as powerful as the Clovis story was, new questions were already bubbling just beneath the surface. Whispers of even older sites, more controversial evidence, were beginning to emerge, threatening to challenge the new orthodoxy all over again. The discovery at Clovis wasn't the end of the story. In many ways, it was just the beginning of a much deeper, more complex mystery. The story of the peopling of the Americas is a fantastic puzzle, and the Clovis discovery was a huge, crucial piece. But what happens when you find pieces that don't seem to fit? That's what we'll be exploring next time. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter in this incredible human story. We've got so much more to uncover. See you next time. Imagine you're an archaeologist, digging through layers of time, sifting through the soil of North America. Suddenly, your trowel hits something hard. You gently brush away the dirt, and there it is, a masterpiece of stone, a relic from a world almost unimaginably ancient. This isn't just any arrowhead. This is a Clovis point. Welcome back to our journey into the deep past. Today, we're uncovering one of the most iconic and enigmatic artifacts in American archaeology. The Clovis point. What makes this piece of stone so special? Why does it captivate scientists and historians alike? Well, to hold one is to hold a direct connection to the first widespread culture of this continent. Let's take a closer look. A Clovis point isn't just a randomly chipped rock. It's a work of art, a testament to incredible skill. They were typically crafted from high-quality materials like flint, chert, or obsidian. The prehistoric artisans, the Clovis people, would carefully select these stones, understanding their properties, knowing exactly how they would fracture. The process of creating one, called flint knapping, is a science in itself. It involves striking the stone with another rock or a piece of antler with immense precision to flake off pieces, slowly sculpting the final form. The result is a beautifully symmetrical, leaf-shaped spearhead. But its most distinctive feature, its true signature, is the flute. This is a long, shallow groove that runs from the base up the center of the point. Look closely, you can see how a final, masterful strike removed this channel. This wasn't just for decoration. This flute was a stroke of genius, a technological innovation that set the Clovis point apart from anything that came before. So, what was the purpose of this flute? For years, archaeologists have debated this. The prevailing theory is that it was designed to help attach the point to a spear shaft. The groove created a thinned area that allowed the point to be seated securely into a split wooden or bone shaft. This joint could then be tightly bound with sinew and sealed with resin or pitch. This created an incredibly strong and reliable weapon, one that could withstand the immense impact of a hunt. And what a hunt it was. The world of the Clovis people was a world of giants. We're talking about mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, and massive bison. These weren't animals you could take down with just any spear. You needed a weapon that was not only sharp but also capable of deep penetration to reach vital organs. The Clovis point was exactly that. It was the high-tech weaponry of its day, a deadly efficient tool that allowed small bands of hunters to take on some of the largest land animals that have ever lived. Think about the courage and skill required. A team of hunters, armed with these fluted spears, coordinating their attack on a creature the size of a modern-day bus. It was a high-risk, high-reward endeavor. A successful hunt meant a massive bounty of meat, fat, hides for clothing and shelter, and bone for tools. It meant survival. The Clovis point was the key to unlocking this bounty, the tool that enabled these early peoples to thrive in a challenging Ice Age environment. Now, here's where the story gets even more fascinating. These distinctive fluted points don't just show up in one or two places. They've been found scattered all across North America, from the sun-scorched deserts of the Southwest to the lush forests of the East, from the plains of Canada down into Mexico. This isn't a coincidence. The widespread distribution of this very specific technology tells us something profound. It suggests that, for a period of time, roughly 13,000 years ago, a single, unifying cultural tradition spread across the continent with breathtaking speed. It's like finding the same brand of smartphone in every country around the world today. It points to a connected network of people who shared ideas, shared knowledge, and shared a way of life. The Clovis point is their signature, left for us to find, a calling card from the past. For a long time, the story was simple. The Clovis people were the first people in the Americas. The discovery of these points was seen as the definitive evidence of humanity's arrival on the continent. They were the pioneers, the trailblazers who crossed the Bering Land Bridge and populated a new world. This idea, known as the Clovis First Model, dominated archaeology for decades. But as with all good science, the story is constantly evolving. In recent years, new discoveries have begun to challenge this long-held theory. Archaeologists have found evidence of human presence at sites that appear to be older than the oldest Clovis sites. This has sparked intense debate and excitement in the scientific community. Were there people here before Clovis? Who were they? And what was their relationship to the people who made these beautiful fluted points? This doesn't diminish the importance of the Clovis people. In fact, it makes their story even more compelling. It means that instead of being the very first arrivals, they may have been a uniquely successful group whose innovative technology, the Clovis point, allowed them to expand rapidly and leave a permanent mark on the landscape. They weren't just the first, they were the first cultural superstars of North America. Their reign, however, was relatively brief. The Clovis culture seems to disappear from the archaeological record almost as quickly as it appeared, right around the time the Great Ice Age mammals went extinct. Did they hunt the megafauna to extinction? Did a dramatic climate shift change their world forever? Or did they simply adapt, their culture evolving into the many diverse Native American traditions that followed? These are the questions that keep archaeologists digging, searching for the next clue. So, the next time you see a picture of a Clovis point, don't just see a stone tool. See a symbol of ingenuity, a mark of incredible skill and bravery. See the signature of a people who mastered a continent. It's a tangible piece of a grand, unfolding story, the story of humanity in the Americas. It reminds us that history is not just written in books. but also in the very earth beneath our feet, waiting to be discovered. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the past. If you found this journey as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more adventures into our shared human story. We've got so much more to explore together. See you next time. Imagine, if you will, a world sculpted by ice. A world of vast, open tundra and sprawling forests of spruce and pine. This was the world of the Clovis people, some of the earliest inhabitants of the Americas, living over 13,000 years ago. And in this world, giants roam amid, woolly mammoths with tusks like crescent moons, towering mastodons that shook the earth with every step, and giant bison with horns spanning 6 feet wide. To us, they are creatures of myth and museum. To the Clovis people, they were neighbors, and sometimes they were to prey. This is the story of the hunters of giants. It's not just a tale of the hunt, but a story of incredible skill, profound courage, and a deep, intimate connection with the natural world. It's a story of survival, written in stone and bone. How did they do it? How did small bands of humans, armed with little more than stone-tipped spears and their own ingenuity, bring down beasts that could weigh over 10 tons? The answer lies not in brute force, but in intellect, teamwork, and an almost supernatural understanding of their environment. The hunt didn't begin with a chase. It began with listening. It began with watching. The Clovis people were master trackers. They could read the land like we read a book. A broken twig, a patch of flattened grass, the faintest impression in the mud. These were all clues, telling a story of what passed by, how long ago, and where it was going. They understood the seasonal migrations of the great herds, the paths they took to watering holes, the places they sought shelter from the biting winds of the Ice Age. They weren't just hunting an animal. They were hunting a specific animal. A scout might spend days observing a herd, looking for the one that was old, young, or perhaps slightly injured. Isolating a single target from a massive, protective herd was the first, and perhaps most critical, challenge. To rush in would be suicide. A panicked herd was a force of nature, an unstoppable stampede. Patience was their greatest virtue. Once a target was chosen, the real hunt began. It was a coordinated dance, a symphony of strategy. They wouldn't charge head-on. Instead, they would use the landscape itself as their accomplice. They might drive their quarry towards a natural trap, a narrow ravine, a boggy swamp, or a steep cliff. Fire and smoke could be used to create diversions, to confuse the animal and steer it exactly where they wanted it to go. Every member of the hunting party had a role. Some would create noise and distractions, while others lay in wait, silent and unseen. This was a collective effort, a testament to their social bonds. Trust in your fellow hunter was as vital as the sharpness of your spear point. Your life literally depended on the person standing beside you. And what of their weapons? The hallmark of the Clovis culture is the Clovis point. This wasn't just a sharp rock. It was a masterpiece of Stone Age engineering, crafted from flint, chert, or obsidian. These spearheads were long, leaf-shaped, and incredibly sharp. But their true genius lay in the flute, a channel or groove carved from the base up the center. This flute allowed the point to be attached securely to a wooden spear shaft, creating a weapon that was both durable and deadly. It was designed for deep penetration, to pierce the thick hides and muscle of a mammoth. Now, picture the final moments. The mammoth is trapped, confused, and angry. The air is thick with tension, the ground trembling. The hunters close in, their movements swift and precise. They don't aim for the head or the thick skull. They knew anatomy. They aimed for the vital organs, the soft underbelly, the areas where their spears could do the most damage. It was a flurry of controlled, courageous action. A dance with death. A single mistake, a moment of hesitation, could be fatal. A swipe of a trunk or the charge of a wounded beast could end a hunteress life in an instant. This required a level of bravery that is hard for us to comprehend. To stand before a living mountain of muscle and fur, a creature that could crush you without a thought, and to hold your ground. This was the essence of the Clovis hunter. But when the great beast finally fell, it wasn't a moment of simple victory. It was a moment of profound significance. A sense of awe, respect, and gratitude would have filled the air. This animal was not just meat. It was life. It was everything. Its fall meant that their families would eat, that their children would survive the harsh winter. The work was far from over. Processing an animal of this size was a monumental task. The thick hide would be carefully removed, to be used for clothing, shelter, and cordage. The meat would be butchered and preserved, smoked or dried to last 4 months. The massive bones and tusks were a treasure trove of raw materials. They were carved into tools, needles, beads, and even weapons. Nothing was wasted. Every part of the animal was honored and utilized, a sign of their deep respect for the life they had taken. These kill sites, discovered by archaeologists, are like frozen moments in time. We find the scattered bones of mammoths alongside the distinctive Clovis points that brought them down. These sites tell us the story. They are the final chapter of the hunt and the first chapter of the community's survival. So when we think of the Clovis people, let's not just see them as primitive hunters. Let's see them as they were: brilliant strategists, master craftsmen, and courageous providers. They were people who lived in a state of profound connection with their world, a world of giants. They understood its rhythms, respected its power, and learned to survive within it through intelligence and cooperation. Their story is a powerful reminder of human resilience in our ancient, enduring bond with the wild. It's a story of awe, a story of survival, etched into the very heart of the American continent. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations into our incredible past. We'll see you in the next one. Hey everyone, welcome back to our journey into the past. Today, we're diving deep into Chapter 8, Tools of Survival. We're going to get our hands dirty, metaphorically speaking, and explore the incredible toolkit of the Clovis people. What did they carry with them across the vast landscapes of ancient North America? And what do these tools tell us about their minds and their way of life? Let's find out. Imagine you're living over 13,000 years ago. There are no stores, no metal, no instruction manuals. Everything you need to survive, you have to make yourself from what you can find around you. This is the world of the Clovis people, and their ingenuity is nothing short of breathtaking. Their toolkit wasn't just a collection of objects. It was the key to their survival, a testament to their intelligence, and a gallery of their artistry. Let's start with the star of the show. The Clovis point. We've talked about it before, but it's impossible to overstate its importance. These weren't just simple arrowheads. They were beautifully crafted spear points, often made from high-quality materials, like shirt, flint, or obsidian. The defining feature is the flute, a channel or a groove removed from the base on both sides. This wasn't for decoration. This fluting was a brilliant engineering solution that allowed the point to be securely attached, or hafted, to a wooden or bone spear shaft. This created a robust, reliable weapon, essential for hunting the massive megafauna of the Ice Age, like mammoths and mastodons. Making a Clovis point was a masterclass in what we call flint-knapping. It required a deep understanding of the stone's properties. The maker would start with a large piece of rock, a core, and use a harder stone, a hammerstone, to strike off large flakes. This is called percussion flaking. Then, using more precise tools, perhaps made of antler or bone, they would use pressure flaking to carefully shape the edges, making them razor. The final and most difficult step was creating that flute. This required immense skill. One wrong move, one misplaced strike, and the entire point, which might have taken hours to create, could shatter. The fact that we find so many perfectly formed Clovis points shows that this was a skill passed down and perfected through generations. It reveals a mind capable of planning, problem-solving, and executing a complex, multi-step process. But their toolkit wasn't just for hunting big game. Daily life required a whole range of other implements. They created stone knives, which might have looked similar to the spear points, but were adapted for cutting and butchering. After a successful hunt, a mammoth was a mountain of resources, and you needed the right tools to process it. Sharp knives were essential for cutting through thick hide and muscle. Then you have the scrapers. These were often smaller, more robust tools, sometimes with a steep, strong edge. Their job was crucial: cleaning animal hides. Once a hide was removed, it had to be scraped clean of all flesh and fat before it could be tanned and turned into clothing, shelter, or containers. We find different types of scrapers, some designed to be held in the hand, others perhaps hafted onto a handle for better leverage. This specialization shows they weren't just making generic sharp rocks. They were designing specific tools for specific tasks. This is a clear sign of advanced cognitive ability and an efficient, organized approach to daily chores. And let's not forget the organic materials. While stone preserves well, tools made of bone, ivory, and antler were just as important. From the remains of the animals they hunted, the Clovis people crafted an array of essential items. We have found incredible examples of bone and ivory tools, including objects that look like long, beveled rods. Some archaeologists believe these were foreshafts for their spears, a component that sat between the main spear shaft and the stone point. This modular design was brilliant. If the point broke off in an animal, the hunter wouldn't lose their entire spear, just the point and the foreshaft, which could be replaced. We also find finely crafted bone needles, complete with tiny, drilled eyes. Think about that for a second. Drilling a hole in a fragile piece of bone with nothing but a sharp stone flake requires incredible patience and dexterity. These needles tell us they were sewing. They were creating tailored, fitted clothing from animal hides, which would have been absolutely essential for surviving the cold Ice Age climate. This wasn't just about throwing a skin over your shoulders. This was about crafting garments that offered real protection from the elements. The spear shafts themselves were a product of skill. They needed to be straight, strong, and balanced. Clovis people would have carefully selected the right wood, straightened it, likely using heat and moisture, and smoothed it down. Some shafts might have even been fletched with feathers for stability in flight, much like arrows. When you combine a perfectly balanced wooden shaft, a bone foreshaft, and a masterfully crafted stone point, you have a high-performance, modular weapon system. This is a level of technological sophistication we often do unassociate with so-called Stone Age people. So, what does this entire toolkit reveal? It shows us that the Clovis people were not just primitive hunters roaming the land. They were highly intelligent engineers, skilled artisans, and practical problems. Their tools demonstrated deep knowledge of their environment, knowing where to find the best stone, which wood was best for a spear, and how to use every part of a hunted animal. Their craftsmanship goes beyond pure function. Many Clovis points are, frankly, beautiful. They are often symmetrical, finely finished, and made from visually stunning stone. This suggests an aesthetic sense, a pride in their work that went beyond simple utility. They weren't just making a tool. They were creating an object of quality and perhaps even cultural significance. The consistency of the Clovis point style across a vast continent, from Nova Scotia to Mexico, is also fascinating. It suggests a shared culture, a network of communication and learning where this specific, highly effective technology was passed from group to group, generation to generation. It was the killer app of its day, a technology so successful that it became the standard across ancient America. In essence, the tools of the Clovis people are a window into their minds. They show us a people who could plan for the future, solve complex engineering problems, and master difficult crafts. They possessed the foresight to create specialized tools for tasks they knew they would face. From hunting a mammoth to sewing a winter cloak, they were true survivors, masters of their world, equipped not just with stone and bone, but with the most powerful tool of all, the human mind. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of the Clovis Toolkit. It's amazing what we can learn from a few pieces of stone and bone, isn't it? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and you won't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter. We love hearing your thoughts, so please leave your questions and comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Imagine, if you will, the world as it was over 13,000 years ago. A world untouched, vast, and wild. This is the world of the Clovis people, and this is where our story begins. Let's journey back to a time when the last great ice sheets were retreating, carving out the landscapes we know today, but in a form that was still raw and untamed. The sun dips low, casting long, golden shadows across a wide, grassy plain. Near the bend of a sparkling, clear river, a small plume of smoke rises into the cooling air. This is home, not a permanent city of stone and wood, but a temporary camp, a waypoint in the endless journey of a nomadic people. Here, a small band of Clovis people, perhaps 30 individuals, a few families bound by kinship and survival, have made their shelter for the night. Their dwellings are not grand structures. They are likely simple, functional shelters made from animal hides, stretched over frames of mammoth, bone, or wood. Easy to assemble, easy to dismantle. They offer protection from the biting wind and the night's predators, a small pocket of warmth and safety in the immense wilderness. The location is chosen with care, close to fresh water, with a good vantage point to spot both game and danger, and near a source of the precious stone they need for their tools. As dusk settles, the heart of the camp comes alive. A central fire crackles and spits, its light dancing on the faces of those gathered around. This fire is more than just a source of heat and light. It is the nucleus of their community. Here, the day's successes are shared. The hunters have returned, their prize a massive bison, a testament to their skill, courage, and the deadly effectiveness of their iconic fluted spear points. The air is thick with the savory smell of roasting meat, a feast earned through collective effort. There are no elaborate dining tables, no formal ceremonies as we might imagine them. There is simply the sharing of food, a fundamental act of community. The choicest cuts might go to the hunters who made the kill, or perhaps to the elders, the keepers of wisdom, or to the children, the future of the band. Everyone gets a share. Survival depends on this reciprocity, this unspoken agreement that the good of the group is the good of the individual. Listen closely. Can you hear the murmur of voices? The sound of their language, lost to time, now fills the space between the crackling flames. A grizzled elder, his face a map of countless seasons, might be recounting a story. Not just a simple tale, but a living history, a lesson woven into a narrative of ancestral spirits, heroic hunts, and the creation of the world. These stories are their library, their school, their entertainment. They teach the young how to track a mammoth, which plants are safe to eat, how to read the stars, and what it means to be Clovis. A child, wide-eyed, listens intently, absorbing the knowledge that will one day ensure their own survival. A young hunter, his hands still stained from the day's work, listens to the story of a legendary ancestor, finding inspiration and courage for the hunts to come. The stories bind them together, giving them a shared identity, a sense of place in the vast, often intimidating world. Look around the circle of firelight. Not everyone is idle. In the gentle glow, you can see hands at work. A man sits, a piece of high-quality chert or flint held firmly in one hand, a hammerstone in the other. With practiced, precise strikes, he is crafting a new spear point. This is knapping, an art form born of necessity. Each flake that falls away is a decision, a step closer to the perfect tool. The distinctive flute, a channel removed from the base, is the signature of his culture. It's not just a functional feature to help attach the point to a spear shaft. It is a mark of his people, a tradition passed down through generations. The sound of stone striking stone is a rhythmic percussion in the night, the soundtrack of their ingenuity. Nearby, a woman is working a hide. Using a scraper made of bone or stone, she meticulously cleans it, preparing it for tanning. This hide will become clothing, part of a shelter or strong cordage. Her movements are efficient, honed by years of practice. Every part of the animal is used. Nothing is wasted. Bones become needles and awls. Sinew becomes thread. Even the hooves can be boiled down for glue. This deep respect for the animals they hunt, this philosophy of using everything, is a core part of their worldview. Children are not separate from this world of work. They learn by watching, by doing. A young girl might be learning to sew a seam with a bone needle, her small hands guided by her mother's. A young boy might be practicing his aim with a small, toy spear, imitating the hunters he so admires. Play and learning are one and the same, preparing them for the roles they will one day fill. The camp is a microcosm of their society. It is a place of shared labor, shared food, and shared knowledge. But it is also a place of individual moments, A mother humming a soft lullaby to a baby nestled in a fur-lined carrier. Two friends quietly sharing a look of understanding across the fire. A young person gazing up at the brilliant, star-filled sky, a canvas of celestial diamonds, untouched by the light pollution of our modern world. What did they see in those stars? Constellations of great beasts, the paths of spirits. We can only wonder. Life was not easy. Danger was a constant companion. A sudden storm, a hunting accident, an encounter with a massive short-faced bear or a saber-toothed cat. Any of these could spell disaster. The remains we find in the archaeological record sometimes tell stories of injury and hardship, but they also tell stories of healing and care, of individuals who survived serious wounds, suggesting they were looked after by their group. This is the essence of their gatherings. Mutual support in a challenging world. As the fire burns down to glowing embers and the camp settles into sleep, the sounds of the night take over. The gentle flow of the river, the distant call of a wolf, the whisper of the wind through the tall grasses. The Clovis people rest, gathering their strength for the new day, for the next hunt, for the next leg of their journey across a continent they were the first to call home. This dreamlike scene, this small glimpse into their lives, is pieced together from fragments of evidence. A scattered handful of stone tools, the bones of extinct animals, the faint traces of an ancient hearth. But these fragments allow us to imagine a people of incredible resilience, intelligence, and deep connection to their world. They were not simple savages, but sophisticated pioneers, masters of their environment, who lived in close-knit communities, sharing stories and crafting their future under the stars. Their camps were the beating heart of their culture, temporary islands of humanity in the vast, wild ocean of Ice Age America. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this glimpse into the world of the Clovis people fascinating, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the ancient past. We love exploring these stories with you. Until next time, stay curious. Hello, history buffs and adventure seekers. Welcome back to our journey through time. Today, we're rediving deep into one of the most fascinating chapters of human history on the American continent. The incredible story of the Clovis people. Have you ever wondered how the first widespread culture spread across what is now the United States? Well, get ready, because we're about to follow their footsteps across an ancient landscape, from the sun-baked plains of New Mexico all the way to the lush forests of Pennsylvania. This isn't just a story of migration. It's a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and the dawn of a new world. So, who were the Clovis people? The name comes from a discovery that changed everything we thought we knew about the first Americans. Back in the 1930s, near the town of Clovis, New Mexico, archaeologists unearthed something truly special. Alongside the massive bones of a long-extinct mammoth, they found a distinctively crafted stone spear point. This wasn't just any arrowhead. It was long, beautifully fluted, meaning a channel was carved down its base, likely to help attach it to a spear shaft end expertly made from high-quality stone like chert or flint. This unique tool, now known as the Clovis point, became the calling card of an entire culture. These weren't just artifacts. They were the keys that unlocked the story of a people who lived around 13,000 years ago. For a long time, the Clovis people were believed to be the very first humans to set foot in the Americas. While newer discoveries are challenging that Clovis first model, there's no denying their monumental impact. What makes the Clovis culture so astonishing is not just when they appeared, but how far and how fast they spread. Imagine a continent vastly different from today's. Giant ice sheets still covered much of Canada, and megafauna like mammoths, mastodons, giant sloths, and saber-toothed cats roamed the land. It was into this wild, untamed world that the Clovis people emerged, and they didn't just survive. They thrive. Let's trace their incredible journey. The classic Clovis sites, like the one in New Mexico, are found throughout the American Southwest. But here's where it gets amazing. Archaeologists started finding identical Clovis points thousands of miles away. In the vast plains of Montana, at sites like Ansig, they found Clovis tools buried with the remains of a young child, giving us a deeply personal glimpse into their world. Travel southeast, all the way to Florida, and you'll find Clovis points submerged in ancient sinkholes and riverbeds, like the famous page lads in sight. This tells us they were not only big-game hunters on the plains, but also skilled at adapting to coastal and wetland environments. Move up the Atlantic coast, and you'll find their signature artifacts in places like Pennsylvania and Virginia. From west to east, north to south, their presence is undeniable. This continent-wide spread happened in what seems to be a geological blink of an eye, perhaps in just a few hundred years. How did they do it? This is one of the biggest and most exciting questions in archaeology. One popular theory is that they were highly mobile, specialized hunters following the herds of megafauna. A group might follow a mammoth herd for hundreds of miles, and over generations, this nomadic lifestyle would naturally lead them across the continent. Their toolkit, centered around the efficient and deadly Clovis point, was perfectly suited for taking down these massive beasts. A single successful mammoth hunt could feed a group for weeks, providing not just meat, but also hides for shelter and clothing, and bones for tools, and even art. But calling them just mammoth hunters might be selling them short. Their adaptability was their true superpower. Evidence shows they also hunted bison, deer, and smaller game, and gathered plants and other resources. They weren't just mindlessly following herds. They were explorers, learning the rhythms of new landscapes, finding the best stone for their tools, and mastering diverse ecosystems. This flexibility is the key to understanding their rapid expansion. They weren't just moving through the land. They were making it their home, from the arid deserts to the dense eastern woodlands. Think about the materials they used. Archaeologists can trace the stone used to make a Clovis point back to its original quarry. In many cases, a point found at a campsite is made from stone that came from hundreds of miles away. This suggests two things. Either these groups traveled vast distances in their lifetimes, or they were part of a sophisticated exchange network, trading high-quality materials with other groups. It paints a picture of a society that was far more connected and complex than we might imagine. They weren't just isolated bands of hunters. They were a network of people sharing knowledge, technology, and resources across a massive geographical area. This shared technology, the Clovis point, is what truly defines them as a single culture. Imagine finding the same brand of smartphone in every country on Earth. That's the modern equivalent of what we see with Clovis points. The consistency in their design, from Montana to Florida, is remarkable. It implies a shared set of instructions, a tradition passed down meticulously from one generation to the next. Learning to make a Clovis point, a technique called fluting, is incredibly difficult. It requires immense skill and precision. The fact that so many people, across such a wide area, all knew how to do it in the same way speaks to a strong, unified cultural identity. So what happened to the Clovis people? Around 12,800 years ago, their distinctive points start to disappear from the archaeological record, replaced by a variety of different regional styles. At the same time, the giant megafauna they hunted also went extinct. Did they hunt the mammoths to extinction? Did a dramatic climate change event, known as the Younger Dryas, alter their world so drastically that they had to change their way of life? Or was it a combination of factors? This is another great debate that keeps archaeologists busy. The end of the Clovis era wasn't necessarily the end of the people themselves. Rather, it was likely a transformation. As the world changed, they adapted their single, continent-wide culture, branching out into the diverse array of regional cultures that would come to define ancient America for the next 10,000 years. The legacy of the Clovis people is nothing short of epic. They were the first to put a widespread human footprint on a continent teeming with Ice Age giants. Their journey across North America is a powerful story of exploration and adaptation. They were pioneers in the truest sense of the word, equipped with a revolutionary technology and an unyielding spirit that allowed them to colonize a continent. Their story is written in stone, scattered across the land, waiting for us to piece it together. Every Clovis point we find is a message from the past, a tangible link to these incredible trailblazers. They remind us that the drive to explore, to adapt, and to build a new world is a fundamental part of the human story. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey across ancient America. I hope you found the story of the Clovis culture as amazing as I do. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about the mysteries of our past, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Let me know in the comments which ancient culture you'd like to explore next. Until then, stay curious. Have you ever held a piece of ancient history in your hand? Not just a fossil or a rock, but something crafted by a human mind and human hands thousands of years ago. Today, we're diving deep into the world of our ancestors, exploring a skill so fundamental, so powerful, it literally shaped our destiny. The art of stone, specifically, the incredible craft of flint knapping. Now, it's easy to look at an arrowhead or a stone blade and think, oh, they just banged two rocks together. But that's like saying a sculptor just chips away at a block of marble. The reality is infinitely more complex and, frankly, awe-inspiring. This wasn't random smashing. This was an art form, a science, and a tradition passed down through countless generations. Every single strike, every flake of stone that was removed, was a deliberate, calculated action. Imagine this. A master flint knapper sits with a core of flint, a material like glass that breaks in a very predictable way if you know what you're doing. In their other hand, they hold a hammerstone, maybe a piece of antler or a harder rock. They're not just thinking about the final shape. They're visualizing the entire process, seeing the finished tool inside the raw stone. They have to understand the angles, the force required, the internal structure of the flint itself. A strike that's too hard could shatter the entire piece, wasting precious material and hours of work. A strike that's too soft will do nothing. The process often began with what's called percussion knapping. This is where they'd use a hammerstone to strike off large flakes, roughing out the basic shape of the tool. Think of it as the broad strokes of a painting. They'd create a striking platform, a specific spot on the edge of the stone to control exactly where the force would travel. With a precise tap, a long, thin flake would shear off. A process that created a shockwave traveling through the stone at over 11,000 miles per hour. It's physics in its most raw and primal form. But the real magic happens in the finishing stages. This is where they would switch to a technique called pressure flaking. Instead of striking the stone, they would use a pointed tool, maybe an antler tine or a piece of bone, and apply very precise, controlled pressure to the edge. With a skillful push and a twist, they could press off tiny, paper-thin flakes. This allowed for incredible detail and sharpness. They could create serrated edges for sawing, fine, sharp points for piercing, and beautifully symmetrical shapes that are as much a work of art as they are a functional tool. Think about the level of focus this required, the deep, intimate knowledge of the material, the muscle memory built up over a lifetime of practice. A master knapper could look at a piece of flint and know its quality just by the color, the texture, or the sound it made when tapped. They could read the ripples and lines on the stone's surface like a map, guiding their every move. This was a skill that took years, even decades, to master. Young members of a tribe would have learned by watching their elders, starting with simple tasks and gradually progressing to more complex ones. It was a cornerstone of their education and their survival. And the variety of tools they created is just staggering. It wasn't just arrowheads. They made axes for chopping wood, scrapers for cleaning hides, knives for butchering animals, burins for engraving bone and ivory, and drills for making holes. Each tool was perfectly designed for its specific purpose. A hide scraper needed a durable, rounded edge that wouldn't tear the skin. A spear point needed to be aerodynamic and strong enough to withstand impact. The flint knapper was the engineer, the designer, and the manufacturer all rolled into one. But here's where the story gets even more fascinating. Archaeologists have found stone tools made from materials that are hundreds, sometimes even thousands, of miles away from where they were discovered. For example, a particular type of beautiful, high-quality obsidian from a specific volcano might be found at a campsite 500 miles away. Or a type of chert known to come from only one quarry might be found distributed across an entire region. What does this tell us? It proves that our ancient ancestors were not isolated little groups wandering the landscape alone. They were connected. These rare and valuable stones were being traded across vast distances, moving from hand to hand, from group to group. This is the earliest evidence of social networks, of long-distance trade and communication. A beautifully made tool from a rare stone wasn't just a utilitarian object. It was a status symbol. It was a sign of wealth, power, and connection. Owning such an item meant you, or someone in your group, had the resources and social standing to trade for it. These objects weren't just tools. They were carrying stories, connecting distant communities, and forming the very first threads of a complex human society. So, the next time you see a flint arrowhead in a museum, take a closer look. Don't just see a simple weapon. See the mind of the artist who envisioned it. See the hands of the craftsman who meticulously shaped it. See the physicist's understanding of force and fracture. And see the traveler who carried it. A tangible link in a vast, ancient network that connected humanity across continents. You're not just looking at a piece of stone. You're looking at the dawn of art, technology, and society itself. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button. And be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so much more to explore together. Until next time, stay curious. Welcome back to our journey into the past. Today, we're re-diving into a question that probably crosses everyone's mind when they think about the Ice Age. What was on the menu? Forget your modern grocery store. Survival back then was a daily, high-stakes hunt and gathering mission. Let's fire up our time machine and explore the prehistoric pantry in Chapter 12. What they ate and hunted. Picture this. Vast, icy landscapes, stretching as far as the eye can see. It might look barren, but this world was teeming with life. Specifically, giant life. The absolute superstars of the Ice Age dinner plate were the megafauna. We're talking about colossal woolly mammoths, towering mastodons, woolly rhinos with horns like battering rams, and giant ground sloths, the size of a small car. These weren't just animals. They were walking, breathing buffets that could feed an entire clan for weeks. A successful mammoth hunt was the ultimate prize. Every part of the animal was used. The meat provided a massive source of protein and fat, crucial for generating body heat in the freezing cold. The thick hides were turned into clothing and shelter. The bones were crafted into tools and even structures, and the ivory from tusks was carved into art, jewelry, and intricate hunting weapons. It was a total-use system, born out of necessity and deep respect for the animal. Hunting these giants was no small feat. It was a coordinated, strategic effort that required immense courage, skill, and cooperation. Imagine trying to take down an animal the size of a double-decker bus, armed only with stone-tipped spears. Groups of hunters would work together, using the landscape to their advantage. They might drive a mammoth into a bog or off a cliff, or perhaps set sophisticated traps. Spear throwers, known as atlatlas, acted as an extension of the arm, allowing hunters to hurl their weapons with incredible force and accuracy from a safer distance. These hunts were incredibly dangerous, and a single mistake could be fatal, but the reward, survival, and prosperity for their community was worth the immense risk. The bond between hunter and megafauna was the defining relationship of the era, but life wasn't just one big mammoth steak after another. Relying solely on these massive beasts was a risky strategy. Hunts could fail, and the herds might migrate. So, our Ice Age ancestors were incredibly adaptable and had a much more varied diet than you might think. They were expert hunters of smaller, more common game too. Herds of reindeer, wild horses, and bison were regular targets. These animals were not only a source of food, but also provided valuable resources like sinew for sewing and antlers for tools. Smaller still, they would hunt birds, catch fish from icy rivers, and trap animals like Arctic foxes and hares for their meat and warm pelts. This diversification was key. It provided a more stable food supply, ensuring that even if a mammoth hunt failed, the community wouldn't starve. It was a classic case of not putting all your eggs, or in T's case, all your spears in one basket. Now, let's talk about the gathering part of being a hunter. While meat was the primary source of calories, plants played a vital role, especially during the warmer, albeit brief, summer months. People had an encyclopedic knowledge of their local environment. They knew which berries were safe to eat, which roots were packed with energy, and which leaves had medicinal properties. During the short growing season, they would gather wild berries, like blueberries and cranberries, which could be eaten fresh or possibly preserved by drying or freezing. They dug for starchy roots and tubers, like wild carrots and potatoes, which provided essential carbohydrates. Nuts and seeds were another valuable source of fats and proteins. This plant-based part of their diet added crucial vitamins and minerals that meat alone couldn't provide, ensuring a more balanced nutrition and preventing deficiencies. It demonstrates a deep, intricate understanding of the natural world that was passed down through generations. So, the Ice Age diet was a complex tapestry of big game hunting, smaller game trapping, fishing, and seasonal plant gathering. It was a testament to human ingenuity, cooperation, and adaptability. But this way of life was inextricably linked to the giants of their time. The relationship between humans and megafauna was a delicate dance that shaped the course of history for both species. What happened when that dance ended? The end of the Ice Age brought about massive environmental changes. As the glaciers retreated and temperatures rose, the vast, cold grasslands that the megafauna depended on began to disappear, replaced by dense forests. This climate change put immense pressure on the populations of mammoths, mastodons, and other large beasts. On top of these environmental pressures, you had increasingly sophisticated human hunters. For millennia, humans and megafauna had coexisted. But as human populations grew and hunting techniques became even more effective, the pressure mounted. The disappearance of these giant animals, an event known as the Quaternary Extinction Event, is a topic of intense debate among scientists. Was it primarily the changing climate, or was it the overkill hypothesis, suggesting that human hunting drove them to extinction? The most likely answer is that it was a combination of both. A perfect storm of a rapidly changing environment and relentless pressure from highly skilled predators proved too much for these magnificent creatures. The extinction of the megafauna marked the end of an era and forced a profound shift in human society. The foundation of their diet and culture for thousands of years was gone. Humans had to adapt or perish. The focus shifted away from big game hunting towards a broader spectrum of resources. They began hunting smaller forest animals like deer and boar more intensively. Fishing and fowling became more important. The collection of plants, nuts, and seeds became a much larger part of their subsistence strategy. This dramatic change in diet and lifestyle laid the groundwork for the next great revolution in human history: the development of agriculture. The need to find new, reliable food sources eventually led people to begin cultivating plants and domesticating animals, fundamentally changing our relationship with the planet forever. The legacy of the Ice Age hunt is a powerful reminder of how deeply intertwined we are with the environment and how the disappearance of even one species can change the world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Ice Age kitchen. It is incredible to think about the challenges our ancestors faced and the ingenuity they used to overcome them. If you found this journey into the past as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time! Imagine a world where giants roamed, not in fairy tales, but right here on Earth. Mammoths with tusks like spiraled trees, saber-toothed cats with fangs like daggers, and ground sloths so large they could look into a second-story window. This was the world of the megafauna, a spectacular era of colossal life. But then, almost in the blink of an eye, geologically speaking, this is the story of their silent departure, the quiet fading of an entire world. Let's travel back in time to about 12,900 years ago, to the end of the Pleistocene age. The great ice sheets that had covered much of the northern hemisphere for millennia were in retreat. The world was warming up, landscapes were changing, and for a while, it seemed like a new, vibrant era was dawning. But for the largest creatures on the planet, it was the beginning of the end. In North America alone, over 70% of large mammal species disappeared. Across the globe, from Australia to Eurasia, the story was tragically similar. The titans of the Ice Age were walking their final steps. So, what happened? What could possibly wipe out so many powerful, well-adapted animals in such a short amount of time? This is one of the greatest detective stories in all of science. A mystery with three main suspects: climate change, human hunters, and a wild card from outer space. Let's start with the most obvious culprit: the climate. The end of the Pleistocene wasn't a smooth, gradual warming. It was a roller coaster. There was a sudden, dramatic cold snap known as the Younger Dryas, which plunged the world back into nearest age conditions for over 1,000 years. Imagine you're a woolly mammoth, perfectly adapted to the cold, grassy steppes. Suddenly, the climate flips. The plants you rely on for food disappear, replaced by different forests or your vast, open rangelands become fragmented. Water sources shift. For animals that take a long time to reproduce and need huge territories to survive, this kind of rapid, chaotic change can be devastating. It's like the rules of the game changed overnight, and these giant players couldn't adapt fast enough. Their world was literally crumbling beneath their massive feet. But the climate wasn't the only new force on the landscape. Another suspect was emerging, a creature small in stature but with a brain and a toolkit unlike anything the world had ever seen. Us Homo sapiens. Our ancestors, the Clovis people in North America, were masterful hunters. They had developed sophisticated stone-tipped spears that could pierce the thick hides of mammoths and mastodons. For a long time, the dominant theory was the overkill hypothesis. The idea is that as humans spread across new continents, they were like an invasive species, hunting these large, slow-reproducing animals to extinction. The megafauna had evolved for millions of years without a predator. This, intelligent and relentless, they may not have even recognized humans as a threat until it was too late. Think about it. A coordinated group of hunters could take down a single mammoth, providing an enormous amount of food. It would have been an irresistible target. Evidence of kill sites, where animal bones are found alongside human tools, supports this theory. We were the new top predator, and the old guard just couldn't compete. However, blaming it all on our ancestors might be too simple. The evidence isn't always clear-cut. While we find some kill sites, we don't find them everywhere for every species that went extinct. Could a relatively small population of humans really wipe out entire continents of giant animals? This leads many scientists to believe it wasn't one or the other, but a deadly combination. It's what some call the Wanto punch. The climate was already putting the megafauna under immense stress. Their populations were likely shrinking. Their habitats were fragmented, and they were struggling to find food. Then, along came highly efficient human hunters. We didn't have to hunt every last one. We just had to tip the scales by taking out a few key individuals here and there. Especially breeding females or young, we could have pushed already vulnerable populations over the brink, from which they could never recover. It was a perfect storm of environmental change and human pressure. But what if there's another piece to this puzzle? A more explosive, more dramatic suspect. This brings us to our third and most controversial theory: a cosmic catastrophe. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggests that around 12,900 years ago, a comet or asteroid exploded over North America. It wouldn't have left a giant crater like the one that killed the dinosaurs, but rather an airburst of immense power. This explosion would have ignited continent-wide wildfires, melted parts of the ice sheet causing catastrophic floods, and kicked up so much dust and soot that it blocked out the sun, triggering the sudden cooling of the Younger Dryas. Proponents of this theory point to a thin layer of sediment found across the globe from this exact time, containing nanodiamonds, melted glass-like materials, and other exotic particles that they argue could only be formed by the extreme heat and pressure of an extraterrestrial impact. If this is true, it paints a truly apocalyptic picture. The world of the megafauna wouldn't have just faded away. It would have been rocked by fire, flood, and a sudden, unnatural winter. The animals that were UN killed in the initial cataclysm would have found their world instantly transformed into a bleak, inhospitable landscape. This cosmic impact theory is still hotly debated. Many scientists are skeptical, arguing that the evidence can be explained by terrestrial processes, and that the timeline doesn't perfectly match up. But it remains a fascinating, if unsettling, possibility. It reminds us that our planet is part of a much larger, and sometimes violent, cosmic neighborhood. Regardless of which theory you lean towards, climate, humans, a comet, or a combination of all three, the result was the same. The world grew quieter. The thunderous footsteps of the mammoth herds faded into memory. The roar of the American lion was silenced forever. The gentle rustling of the giant ground sloth browsing on trees ceased. It was an extinction that happened not with a single planet-shattering bang, but as a slow creeping silence that fell over the plains, forests, and tundras of the world. One by one, the giants fell, leaving behind a world that felt emptier, smaller. The loss of the megafauna wasn't just a loss of individual species. It was the collapse of an entire ecosystem. These animals were ecosystem engineers. Mammoths, for example, maintained the grasslands by knocking down trees and dispersing seeds over vast distances. When they disappeared, forests encroached on the plains, changing the landscape for every other living thing. Their absence left a void that has never truly been filled. We are living in the shadow of that loss, in a world shaped by their absence. Thinking about the end of the megafauna isn't just a history lesson. It's a profound cautionary tale. It shows how quickly and dramatically worlds can change, and how vulnerable even the mightiest creatures can be to a confluence of pressures. It forces us to look at our own impact on the planet today. We are now living through another great extinction event, one driven almost entirely by human activity. The story of the megafauna's quiet disappearance serves as a powerful and humbling reminder of our responsibility to the incredible diversity of life we still have with us. We are the stewards of this world, and the echoes from 13,000 years ago call on us to listen, to learn, and to act before more of our planet's wonders fade into silence. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. It's a complex and fascinating story with no easy answers, which is what makes it so compelling. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more mysteries from our planet's deep past, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps us create more content like this for you. Let me know in the comments which theory you find most convincing. Until next time, stay curious. Hello, history adventurers, and welcome back to our journey through the deep past. In our last chapter, we marveled at the ingenuity and skill of the Clovis people, the first widespread culture to leave their mark on the Americas. Their iconic fluted points are a testament to their prowess as big game hunters. But just as suddenly as they appeared in the archaeological record, Tevani said,
"That's right."
The Clovis culture, which dominated the landscape for centuries, simply disappears. So, what happened? Today, we're rediving into one of archaeology's greatest cold cases, the mysterious disappearance of the Clovis people. Let's set the scene. We're talking about roughly 12,800 years ago. The world is a very different place. Massive ice sheets are still in retreat, and North America is home to a menagerie of megafauna mammoths, mastodons, giant sloths, and saber-toothed cats. And thriving amongst them are the Clovis people. We find their distinctive spear points from coast to coast, a sign of a successful and widespread cultural tradition. Then, the trail goes cold. The Clovis points stop being made. The archaeological layer that contains them ends, and what comes next is different. It's like a hit TV show getting cancelled on a cliffhanger. So, what are the leading theories? Let's start with the most dramatic one. The Younger Dryas impact theory. Imagine this. A comet, or fragments of one, explodes over North America. The impact doesn't leave a single massive crater, but instead, it triggers a cataclysmic chain of events. Widespread wildfires rage across the continent, and a thick cloud of dust and soot blankets the sky, blocking out the sun. This ushers in a sudden, 1,000-year-long cold snap known as the Younger Dryas. It was a mini ice age, and it would have been devastating. Evidence for this theory includes a thin layer of sediment found at archaeological sites across the globe, dating to this exact period. This black, matte layer contains high concentrations of nanodiamines, microscopic metallic spedulis, and iridium materials that are rare on Earth, but common in extraterrestrial objects. Proponents of this theory argue that this cosmic catastrophe would have wiped out the megafauna that the Clovis people relied on for food. Mammoths and mastodons, already under pressure, couldn't survive the sudden environmental shock. With their primary food source gone and the climate in chaos, the Clovis culture collapsed. It's a blockbuster movie plot, and while it's a compelling and hotly debated idea, it paints a picture of a sudden, apocalyptic end. But not everyone is convinced by the cosmic catastrophe theory. Another leading explanation is a bit more down-to-earth. Overkill and climate change. This theory suggests that the Clovis people were, perhaps, too good at their job. As highly efficient hunters, they may have hunted the megafauna to extinction. We call this overkill hypothesis. Think about it. A small but growing population of skilled hunters, armed with superior technology, targeting large, slow-reproducing animals like mammoths. Over generations, this could have had a massive impact on animal populations. Combine this hunting pressure with the already changing climate. Remember, the world was naturally warming up after the last major ice age. The habitats that supported mammoths and mastodons were shrinking anyway. So, the Clovis people weren't the sole culprits, but their hunting may have been the final nail in the coffin for these magnificent beasts. When the mammoths disappeared, the Clovis way of life, which was so heavily specialized around hunting them, became unsustainable. The culture that had perfected the mammoth hunting toolkit had to change or die out. This theory doesn't require a comet. It points to a combination of human impact and natural climate shifts. But what if they didn't disappear at all? What if they just changed? This brings us to our third major theory: adaptation and cultural evolution. This is perhaps the most widely accepted theory among archaeologists today. It suggests that the Clovis people didn't vanish. They simply evolved. As the megafauna died out and the environment changed, these adaptable people did what humans do best. They adapted. They broke up into smaller, more regional groups. The hunting strategies shifted from big game specialists to versatile generalists. They started hunting smaller animals like bison, deer, and elk, and relying more on gathering plants, fishing, and trapping. As their lifestyle changed, so did their tools. The large, iconic Clovis point was no longer the best tool for the job. It was replaced by a wide variety of smaller, more localized projectile point styles, like Folsom points, which were perfect for hunting the now abundant bison on the Great Plains, or Dalton points in the southeast. According to this view, the disappearance of Clovis is an illusion. The people didn't vanish. Their unified, continent-wide material culture did. They became the ancestors of the diverse array of Native American cultures that followed. The Clovis people were the grandparents, and their children and grandchildren spread out, developed their own traditions, their own toolkits, and their own identities. So, Clovis didn't end. It simply splintered and diversified, branching out into a rich tapestry of new cultures. We stopped seeing Clovis, not because they were gone, but because they had become something new. So, which theory is correct? An asteroid apocalypse, a self-inflicted ecological crisis, or a successful story of adaptation? The truth is, it's probably a complex mix of all three. It's very likely that the climate instability of the Younger Dryas, whether caused by a comet or not, put immense pressure on both the megafauna and human populations. This environmental stress, combined with human hunting pressure, likely led to the extinction of the great beasts. And in the face of this profound change, the Clovis people had to adapt. Their culture transformed, branching out and evolving to fit the new world they found themselves in. The disappearance of the Clovis culture isn't necessarily a story of extinction, but one of transformation. It's a powerful reminder that cultures are not static things set in stone. They are dynamic, living systems that respond to the world around them. The Clovis people were survivors. They faced one of the most dramatic periods of climate change in human history, saw the world they knew vanish, and yet they endured by changing. Their legacy isn't just in their beautiful stone tools, but in the people who came after them, the ancestors of the millions of indigenous people who call the Americas home today. What do you think happened? Was it a cataclysm from the sky, a cautionary tale of overhunting, or a story of human resilience and adaptation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading your theories and ideas. This is one of those fantastic mysteries where the debate is still very much alive, and new evidence could change everything. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the past. If you enjoyed unraveling this ancient mystery, please give this video a thumbs up. And do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter in this incredible human story. Until next time, Stay curious. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey through the deep past of the Americas. In our last episode, we explored the incredible world of the Clovis people, the first widespread culture to leave its mark across this continent. For a long time, their story was considered the beginning and, for some, the near end of the Paleo-Indian saga. But what happened when the Clovis era faded? Did people just disappear? Absolutely not. The end of Clovis wasn't an ending at all. It was the dawn of a new, incredibly diverse chapter. This is the story of what came next, the story of the peoples beyond Clovis. Picture the world around 12,900 years ago. The climate is changing dramatically. The younger Dryas, a sudden and intense cold snap, grips the planet. The great megafauna, the mammoths and mastodons that were central to the Clovis way of life, are vanishing. The resources, the environment, the very world the Clovis people knew, is transforming. In the face of such monumental change, human beings did what we do best. We adapted. The monolithic Clovis culture didn't just vanish. It splintered, evolved, and diversified into a fascinating mosaic of new cultures, each tailored to its own unique corner of the continent. Out of the heartland of the Clovis world, on the Great Plains, a new and distinct tradition emerged, the Folsom culture. If Clovis points are the iconic spearheads of the mammoth hunters, then Folsom points are the calling card of the great bison hunters. Imagine the scene. Vast herds of an ancient new extinct species of giant longhorned bison thundering across the plains. Hunting these massive, powerful animals required a different strategy and different technology. Folsom points are masterpieces of stone tool technology. They are generally smaller and more delicate than Clovis points, but their defining feature is the magnificent flute, a long, wide channel removed from each face. This fluting process was incredibly difficult and risky. A single misplaced strike could shatter a nearly finished point. So why do it? This thinning likely made it easier to haft the point onto a spear shaft, creating a more streamlined and lethal weapon, perfectly designed for penetrating the thick hide and ribs of a giant bison. The craftsmanship is so exquisite that archaeologists today still marvel at the skill of Folsom sites, like the famous Lindenmeyer site in Colorado, give us a window into their lives. We find kill sites with the remains of dozens of bison, suggesting highly organized, communal hunts. These weren't just random encounters. They were carefully planned operations. Hunters would have used the natural landscape arroyos, cliffs, or sand dunes to trap and corner the animals. It was a dangerous, high-stakes game, but the reward was immense. A massive supply of meat, hides for clothing and shelter, and bones for tools. Folsom people were masters of the plains, their lives intricately woven into the rhythm of the bison herds. They carried forward the Clovis legacy of big game hunting, but refined it for a new world and a new primary prey. But the Folsom people were not alone. All across North America, different groups were forging their own paths. In the eastern woodlands, from the Great Lakes down to Florida, a variety of cultures, often grouped under the term late Paleo-Indian, were retrieving. The dense forests of the east didn't support vast herds of bison. Instead, people here adapted to a woodland environment. Their toolkits reflect this. We see a wider variety of stone points, like the Dalton and Cumberland points, which were likely used for hunting deer, elk, and smaller game. These eastern groups weren't just hunters. They were expert foragers with a deep knowledge of the plants, nuts, and fish in their territories. Their lifestyle was likely more settled than their plains counterparts, moving seasonally within a defined homeland to take advantage of different resources as they became available. They were the pioneers of a forest-dwelling tradition that would define life in the East for thousands of years to come. They took the fundamental Clovis' skills, how to work stone, how to hunt, how to survive, and applied them to the rich, complex world of the deciduous forest. Meanwhile, in the far west in the Great Basin, another story was unfolding. The environment here was arid and challenging. The megafauna were gone, and resources were scattered. Here, survival depended on flexibility and an encyclopedic knowledge of a sparse landscape. Archaeologists refer to this as the Western stemmed tradition. Instead of the fluted points of Clovis and Folsom, these people created spear points with stems at the base for their sights often found in caves and rock shelters like Paisley Caves in Oregon, reveal a diet that was incredibly diverse. Yes, they hunted pronghorn antelope and mountain sheep, but they also relied heavily on waterfowl, fish, and a vast array of plant foods. We find grinding stones used to process seeds and roots, and intricately woven baskets and nets, a testament to their skill with plant fibers. This adaptation, known as the desert archaic lifestyle, was one of the most resilient and long-lasting in North America. These weren't just big game hunters. They were masters of desert living, able to extract a living from a land that others might have seen as barren. So, what does this all mean? It means the story of the first Americans is far richer and more complex than just Clovis. The Clovis culture provided a foundational blueprint, a set of skills, and a deep understanding of how to live in this new world. But their descendants, the Folsom, the Dalton, the people of the Western STEM tradition, and countless others we are still discovering, were the innovators. They took that blueprint and rewrote it, creating new technologies, new strategies, and new ways of life in response to a changing world. They were explorers who pushed into every corner of the continent. From the Arctic Circle to the tip of South America, they were engineers who perfected the art of stone tool making. They were naturalists who learned the secrets of every plant and animal in their domain. They were communities that came together to hunt, to share, to create, and to pass their knowledge down through generations. The period after Clovis is not a decline. It is a spectacular bloom of human ingenuity. It's the story of how a single cultural trunk branched out into 1,000 different limbs, each one growing strong and reaching for the light in its own unique way. The legacy of Clovis is not just in their beautiful spear points. It's in the resilience, adaptability, and enduring spirit of the peoples who came after them, the true ancestors of the diverse American nations that would one day flourish across these lands. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration beyond Clovis. The story of humanity is one of constant change and adaptation, and the Paleo-Indian world is one of the most dramatic examples of that. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so much more of the past to uncover together. Until next time, stay curious. Have you ever wondered where the first Americans came from? For decades, scientists have debated this very question, piecing together clues from scattered artifacts. But what if we could ask the people themselves? What if their stories were written not in stone, but in their very own DNA? Welcome back to our series, where today we're diving into the revolutionary world of ancient genetics. We're about to unlock secrets that have been buried for over 12,000 years, rewriting the story of the Americas. Imagine this. It's 1968. And construction workers in Montana stumble upon something extraordinary. It's a collection of over 100 stone and bone tools, all covered in red ochre, a type of pigment. But nestled among these artifacts is something far more precious. The remains of a very young child, a boy no older than 2. This site, known as the Anzick site, became one of the most significant archaeological finds in North America. Why? Because these tools were classic examples of the Clovis culture. The Clovis people are famous for their distinctive, beautifully crafted spear points. For a long time, they were thought to be the first people to inhabit the Americas, around 13,000 years ago. The theory was that they were big game hunters who swept across the continent, leaving their unique toolkit behind. But who were they, really? And where did they go? For a long time, we could only guess. The artifacts told us what asterisk they did, but not who they were. This is where our story takes a dramatic, high-tech turn. Fast forward to the 21st century. A team of scientists, led by Eski Willerslev, was granted permission by modern Native American tribes to analyze the DNA from the remains of the Anzac child. This was a monumental moment. It was the first, and, to this day, the only human burial directly associated with the Clovis culture. The ability to sequence his genome was like finding a time capsule, a direct message from the Ice Age. The results were absolutely groundbreaking. The team successfully sequenced the entire genome of the Anzac child. So, what did they find? The first major revelation was that his DNA was not from Europe, Asia, or anywhere else in the world in a recent sense. Instead, his lineage was distinctly American. The analysis showed that he was most closely related to modern-day Native Americans, particularly those from Central and South America. This was It directly challenged a fringe theory called the Solutrean hypothesis, which suggested that the Clovis people had migrated from Europe. The DNA of the Anzac child provided powerful evidence against this idea. It firmly routed the Clovis people within the family tree of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. In essence, the science confirmed what Native American communities have said for generations. Their ancestors have been on this land since time immemorial. The Anzac child wasn't a mysterious, vanished group. He was an ancestor. But the story gets even more detailed. The DNA allowed researchers to trace his ancestry back even further. It showed that his ancestors came from Siberia, crossing over the Bering Land Bridge that once connected Asia and North America. The genetic data suggests that the ancestors of all Native Americans entered the continent in a single migration wave from Siberia more than 15,000 years ago. Once in the Americas, this founding population split into two main groups. One group, the northern branch, is ancestral to many tribes in Canada and the northern United States. The other group, the southern branch, is the one the Anzac child belonged to. This southern branch is the ancestor of all other indigenous peoples in North, Central, and South America. In fact, the study estimated that around 80% of all Native Americans today are direct descendants of the Anzac child's relatives. Think about that for a second. The genetic story of this one small boy from 12,600 years ago helps to tell the story of millions of people living today. This discovery did more than just connect the dots of ancient migrations. It fostered a powerful collaboration between scientists and Native American tribes. The researchers worked closely with tribal representatives to ensure the study was conducted respectfully. After the research was complete, the Anzac child's remains were reburied in a traditional ceremony, bringing his long journey to a peaceful close. This partnership became a model for how scientific inquiry and indigenous heritage can work together, honoring both the quest for knowledge and the sanctity of ancestral remains. The study of the Anzac child's DNA is a perfect example of how ancient genetics is revolutionizing our understanding of the past. It's like we've been looking at a blurry, black and white photo of history, and suddenly, ancient DNA has brought it into sharp, vibrant color. We can now answer questions we once thought were lost to time. For instance, this technology helps us understand the sheer speed and complexity of the peopling of the Americas. After that initial split, people moved south incredibly fast. Genetic evidence from other ancient remains in South America shows that humans had reached the southern tip of the continent surprisingly quickly after arriving from the north. They weren't just big game hunters following herds. They were adaptable, intelligent explorers, rapidly settling into diverse environments, from coastlines to high mountains to dense rainforests. And the Clovis culture itself. The genetic evidence suggests that Clovis was less of a single, unified tribe and more of a shared technological idea, a brilliant way to make tools that spread rapidly among different groups of people who were already here. This idea, this cultural toolkit, was so effective that it became widespread for a few hundred years. But the people who used it were the direct ancestors of modern Native Americans, not a separate group that vanished. The field of ancient DNA continues to evolve. Every new genome sequenced from ancient remains adds another piece to this incredible human puzzle. We're learning about population movements, how people adapted to new climates, and the genetic connections that span continents and millennia. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just about dates and artifacts. It's about people, families, and the incredible journey of our ancestors. The story written in our DNA is the most personal history book we will ever read. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. The story of the Anzac child is a testament to the power of science and the importance of honoring the past. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next chapter. We have so many more stories to uncover together. See you next time. Welcome back to our channel, where we dig deep into the mysteries of the past. Today, we re-tackling one of the most fascinating and contentious questions in American archaeology. Who are the first people to set foot on this continent? For decades, the answer seems straightforward. The Clovis people. But is that the whole story? Let's find out. For a long time, the Clovis first model was the dominant theory. Around 13,000 years ago, a group of skilled hunters, known for their distinctive fluted spear points, supposedly crossed the Bering Land Bridge from Siberia into Alaska. As the massive ice sheets covering North America began to melt, they followed herds of mammoths and other megafauna south, rapidly populating the entire hemisphere. These iconic Clovis points were found all across North America, from coast to coast, and their widespread, consistent appearance seemed to be the definitive archaeological signature of the first Americans. It was a neat, tidy story that fit the available evidence. For many archaeologists, it was case closed. Any site claiming to be older was met with intense skepticism, often dismissed as having contaminated samples or misinterpreted data. The Clovis first model wasn't just a theory, it was dogma. But what if the story isn't that simple? What if people were here long before the Clovis hunters? That's where things get really exciting. Imagine a small, unassuming rock shelter in western Pennsylvania, nestled beside a creek. This is In the 1970s, archaeologist James Adovasio and his team began excavating here. As they dug deeper, layer by layer, they started finding tools and evidence of human activity. The deeper they went, the older the artifacts became. And then they hit something that would send shockwaves through the archaeological world. They found artifacts in layers that dated back a staggering 16,000 years, maybe even older. That's 3,000 years before the Clovis people were thought to have arrived. The findings included stone tools, fire pits, and even a beautifully preserved fragment of basketry. This was a direct challenge to the Clovis first orthodoxy. Immediately, the critics pounced. They questioned the radiocarbon dates, suggesting that the samples might have been contaminated by ancient coal deposits in the area. The debate raged for years, but Adovasio and his team stood by their meticulous work, arguing that the evidence was solid. Metacroft became the first major crack in the Clovis first wall. Now, let's travel thousands of miles south to the lush landscape of southern Chile. Here, near a small creek, lies the site of Monte Verde. In the late 1970s, archaeologist Tom Dillehay began excavating what he initially thought was a relatively recent site. He couldn't have been more wrong. What he uncovered was a remarkably well-preserved settlement, sealed in a layer of peat that had kept organic materials safe for millennia. He found the remains of wooden huts, stone tools, hearths, and even preserved animal hides. But the most incredible discovery was the age of the site. Radiocarbon dating placed it at around 14,500 years ago, a full millennium before the Clovis people appeared in North America. This wasn't just a few questionable artifacts. It was an entire village frozen in time. The preservation was so extraordinary that Dillehay's team even found a child's footprint preserved in the clay. They found remnants of medicinal plants, suggesting a deep knowledge of the local environment. The evidence was overwhelming. Yet, just like Metacroft, Monte Verde faced intense scrutiny. For over a decade, many prominent archaeologists refused to accept the dates, proposing all sorts of alternative explanations. It took a site visit in 1997 by a panel of skeptical experts, who examined the evidence firsthand, to finally convince the mainstream archaeological community. Monte Verde was officially recognized as a legitimate pre-Clovis site, and with that, the Clovis first model was officially broken. The acceptance of Monte Verde opened the floodgates. Suddenly, archaeologists started re-examining other sites and looking for new evidence with fresh eyes, and they found it. In the Paisley Caves of Oregon, scientists found fossilized human coprolite stats, dried human poop, by the way that dated to over 14,000 years ago. DNA analysis confirmed they were human and predated Clovis. Then there's the Buttermilk Creek complex in Texas. Here, archaeologists unearthed a treasure trove of over 15,000 artifacts, including blades and choppers, buried beneath a classic Clovis layer. The dating, a mind-boggling 15,500 years ago. These weren't isolated flukes. This was a pattern. From the Gold site, also in Texas, to the Pajladson site in Florida where divers found a stone knife, alongside a mastodon tusk, dated to 14,500 years ago. The evidence for pre-Clovis populations was mounting. Each new discovery added another nail to the coffin of the Clovis first theory. The story of the peopling of the Americas was becoming far more complex and much older than anyone had previously imagined. So, If the Clovis people weren't the first, who was? And how did they get here? This is where the debate stands today. The collapse of the Clovis first model has forced us to reconsider everything. One leading theory is the coastal migration route, also known as the Kelp Highway hypothesis. The idea is that instead of walking through an ice-free corridor in the middle of the continent, the first Americans traveled down the Pacific coast in boats. They would have followed the nutrient-rich kelp forests that hugged the shoreline, providing abundant food sources like fish, shellfish, seals, and seabirds. This route would have been open much earlier than the inland corridor, potentially allowing people to arrive as early as 20,000 years ago or even earlier. This model helps explain sites like Monteverde in Chile, which would have been easily accessible from the coast. The problem is that proving this theory is incredibly difficult. Sea levels at the end of the last ice age were much lower, so most of the ancient coastline where these people would have lived is now deep underwater, making archaeological evidence nearly impossible to find. But the plot thickens even further. Some recent, highly controversial discoveries are pushing the timeline back even more dramatically. Take the Cerruti mastodon site in California. Here, researchers claim to have found mastodon bones that appear to have been intentionally broken with stone tools. The date, an absolutely jaw-dropping 130,000 years ago. If TC's true, it would mean that some form of early human, perhaps Neanderthals or another archaic species, was in the Americas over 100,000 years before modern humans were thought to have arrived. However, this claim is extremely contentious. Many archaeologists argue that the tool marks on the bones could have been caused by natural processes, like being trampled or damaged by construction equipment, which was active at the site. Another site in White Sands National Park, New Mexico, has revealed human footprints preserved in ancient mud, dated to between 21,000 and 23,000 years ago. This is perhaps the most compelling evidence yet for a much earlier arrival of modern humans. These aren't just tools. They are the literal footprints of ancient people walking across the landscape. If these dates hold up, it completely rewrites the timeline of human presence in the Americas. So, where does that leave us? The simple story of the Clovis hunters bravely conquering a new world is gone. In its place is a far more intricate and mysterious narrative. We now know that people were almost certainly here, at least 15,000 to 16,000 years ago, and possibly as far back as 23,000 years or more. It's likely there wasn't just one migration, but multiple waves of people arriving over thousands of years, perhaps using different routes, both coastal and inland. The Americas were likely populated by diverse groups of people long before the Clovis culture emerged. The Clovis phenomenon might not represent the arrival of the first people, but rather the development of a new, highly successful technology that spread rapidly among populations already living here. The debate has shifted from were the Clovis people first to how early did people get here? How did they travel? And who were they? It's a puzzle with many missing pieces, and archaeologists are working tirelessly to find them. The story of the first Americans is still being written, with each new discovery adding a fascinating new chapter. Thank you so much for joining us on this archaeological journey. It is incredible to think that the history of our own continent is still so full of mystery. What do you think? Do you believe people arrived 20,000 years ago or even 130,000 years ago? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more historical debates, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep digging into the past. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to our journey through time. Today, we're diving into one of the most transformative discoveries in the history of archaeology, one that completely rewrote the story of human presence in the Americas. We're talking about the Clovis legacy. Imagine a time, not so long ago, when the accepted wisdom was that humans had only been in North America for a few thousand years. The scientific community was largely settled on this idea. Any claims of a deeper, more ancient past were often dismissed, sometimes even ridiculed. It was a comfortable, but ultimately incorrect, understanding of our continent's history. Then, in the 1930s, everything changed. The story begins in a dusty arroyo near Clovis, New Mexico. Here, archaeologists unearthed something extraordinary. Embedded within the fossilized ribcage of an extinct species of mammoth were beautifully crafted, fluted spear points. This wasn't just a lucky find. It was irrefutable proof. Humans were here, hunting massive Ice Age beasts, far earlier than anyone had previously dared to imagine. These distinctive spearheads, now known as Clovis points, became the calling card of a lost people and a lost world. Radiocarbon dating later confirmed the age of these sites, placing them around 13,000 years ago. Suddenly, the timeline of human history in the Americas was pushed back by millennia. This discovery didn't just add a new chapter. It forced a complete rewrite of the entire book. The Clovis First theory was born, proposing that these people were the first inhabitants of the Americas. So, who were the Clovis people? They weren't just survivors. They were master innovators and explorers. Their toolkit was a testament to their ingenuity. The Clovis point itself is a marvel of Stone Age technology. It's characterized by a central groove, or flute, chipped from its base. This flute was a brilliant innovation, allowing the point to be securely attached to a spear shaft, creating a durable and lethal weapon capable of taking down animals as large as mammoths and mastodons. Crafting a Clovis point was no simple task. It required high callidious stone, like chert or flint, and an incredible amount of skill passed down through generations. The Napo had to have a deep understanding of fracture mechanics, striking the stone with precision to achieve the desired shape and sharpness. The fact that we find these points, often made from stone sourced hundreds of miles away from where they were found, tells us something profound about their society. These weren't isolated, static groups. The Clovis people were highly mobile. They lived in a world that was just emerging from the grip of the last ice age. The landscape was dramatic and challenging, populated by megafauna that we can only dream of today. Giant sloths, saber-toothed cats, and, of course, the colossal mammoths. To thrive in this environment, the Clovis people had to be adaptable and resilient. Their lives were likely organized around the seasonal movements of these large animal herds. They were expert hunters, working together in coordinated groups to track and ambush their prey. A successful mammoth hunt would have provided a massive amount of resources, not just meat for food, but also hides for clothing and shelter, and bones and ivory for tools and art. These hunts were high-reward endeavors that formed the backbone of their culture. The Clovis discovery gave North America its first clear, deep-time cultural identity. Before this, the continent's ancient past was a murky, ill-defined concept. Now, there was a name, a face, and a technology associated with the first Americans. It was a powerful, unifying story, a tale of intrepid pioneers venturing into a new world, armed with their wits and their iconic fluted points. For decades, the Clovis First model dominated archaeological thinking. It proposed a straightforward narrative. A single group of people crossed the barren land bridge from Siberia, moved south through an ice-free corridor, and then rapidly spread across 2 continents, leaving their signature spear points as they went. It was a clean, elegant theory that seemed to explain the evidence perfectly. But science never stands still. Just as the Clovis discovery shattered the old consensus, new discoveries began to challenge the Clovis First model. Archaeologists started finding evidence at sites like Monte Verde in Chile, Paisley Caves in Oregon, and the Buttermilk Creek Complex in Texas, which appeared to be older than Clovis. Some of these pre-Clovis sites dated back 15,000, 16,000, or even more years. This new evidence sparked intense debate. At first, it was met with a great deal of skepticism, much like the original claims of ancient humans in the Americas had been. The burden of proof was incredibly high, but as the evidence mounted, the picture began to shift once again. The story of the peopling of the Americas was proving to be far more complex and fascinating than a single migration event. Does this diminish the importance of the Clovis legacy? Not at all. In fact, it makes it even more interesting. The Clovis culture remains a critically important chapter in the story of North America. They represent a period of incredible technological success and rapid expansion. For a time, their way of life was the dominant one across the continent, a remarkable achievement. The Clovis phenomenon might not be the absolute beginning of the story, but it represents a major, continent-wide event. The widespread and relatively sudden appearance of this distinctive technology suggests a period of significant cultural exchange, population growth, and movement. It highlights a moment when a particular set of ideas and innovations proved to be incredibly successful. Ultimately, the legacy of the Clovis discovery is unjust about a specific point or a single group of people. Its true legacy is how it transformed the very practice of archaeology. It taught us to question our assumptions and to follow the evidence, no matter how unbelievable it may seem. It opened the door to the idea of a deep, rich, and complex human history on this continent. It gave North America a story of its own, rooted in the Ice Age. A story not just of survival, but of exploration, innovation, and resilience. The Clovis people were pioneers in the truest sense of the word, adapting to a world in flux, and leaving an indelible mark on the landscape that we can still read today, etched in stone. They remind us that the human spirit of exploration and ingenuity has been shaping this land for a very, very long time. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of the Clovis legacy. It's a story that continues to evolve with every new discovery. If you enjoyed this journey into the deep past, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more adventures in history and archaeology. We'll see you in the next one. Step back in time with me. Not just a few centuries, but over 13,000 years. We're journeying to a world that is both alien and deeply familiar. A world sculpted by ice and roamed by giants. This was the world of the Clovis people, the first widespread, recognizable culture of the Americas. Their story isn't just a dusty chapter in a history book. It's a profound lesson about who we are, where we come from, and the incredible resilience woven into our very DNA. Imagine stepping into their shoes. The air is crisp, colder than today. The landscape is a mosaic of sprawling grasslands, dense forests, and massive, retreating glaciers. And the sounds. The thunderous footsteps of mammoths, the rustle of giant sloths in the brush, the cry of a saber-toothed cat in the distance. This wasn't just a backdrop. It was their everyday reality. A world of immense danger, but also of incredible opportunity. The Clovis people weren't just surviving in this world. They were thriving, and the key to their success can be summed up in one word: adaptability. They were pioneers in the truest sense. As they spread across the vast, unpopulated continents of North and South America, they encountered countless new environments. From the frigid north to the humid tropics, they learned, they adjusted, and they made it their home. This wasn't a slow, generational creep. It was a rapid expansion, one of the most remarkable migrations in human history. They were masters of reading the land, understanding its rhythms, and harnessing its resources. This innate ability to adapt is a fundamental part of the human story, a legacy the Clovis people exemplify with breathtaking clarity. What fueled this incredible journey? Pure, unadulterated curiosity. Think about it. What drives someone to walk over the next hill, to follow a river to its source, to push into the unknown when staying put might seem safer? It's a powerful curiosity, a desire to see what lies beyond the horizon. The Clovis people were explorers, driven by the same impulse that would one day send us to the moon. They didn't have maps or satellite images. Their guides were the stars, the flow of water, and the movements of animals. Each new valley, each new coastline, was a question waiting to be answered. This relentless curiosity is not just a historical trait. It's a spark within all of us, the engine of innovation, discovery, and progress. The Clovis people remind us that our journey as a species has always been propelled by the need to know what's next. Of course, adaptability and curiosity would mean little without the core instinct for survival. And the Clovis toolkit was a masterpiece of Stone Age engineering. Their most iconic creation is the Clovis point, a beautifully crafted, fluted spearhead. This wasn't just a sharp rock. It was a highly effective, technologically advanced weapon. The distinctive flute, a channel carved at the base, allowed it to be securely hafted onto a spear shaft, creating a durable and deadly projectile. These points have been found across North America, often in association with the bones of mammoths and other Hunting a mammoth with a spear is an act of incredible bravery and skill. It required deep knowledge of animal behavior, sophisticated group coordination, and unwavering courage. It was a high-risk, high-reward strategy. A single successful mammoth hunt could feed a group for weeks, providing not just meat, but also hides for shelter and clothing, and bones and ivory for tools and art. The Clovis people were apex predators in a world of giants, and their survival depended on their ingenuity, their teamwork, and their profound understanding of the natural world. This is the essence of human survival, not just enduring, but actively shaping our destiny through intelligence and cooperation. Yet, the story of the Clovis people has a poignant, almost mysterious ending. After flourishing for several centuries, their distinctive culture seems to vanish from the archaeological record around 12,800 years ago. Their disappearance coincides with two major events: the extinction of many of the large mammals they hunted in a period of abrupt climate change known as the Younger Dryas, which saw a rapid return to near-glacial conditions. Did they hunt the megafauna to extinction? Did the changing climate disrupt their way of life beyond recovery? Or did they simply adapt once again, their culture evolving into the diverse array of Native American societies that followed? The debate still rages among archaeologists. There is no simple answer. It's likely a complex combination of all these factors. The world they had mastered changed faster than they could keep up, and the giants they pursued disappeared forever. This is perhaps the most profound lesson the Clovis people teach us. Theirs was a fleeting but brilliant chapter in the human journey. They show us that even the most successful and adaptable cultures are not permanent. They are subject to the powerful forces of environmental change. Their story is a humbling reminder of the delicate balance between humanity and the natural world. It serves as a mirror, reflecting our own challenges in an era of rapid climate change and ecological disruption. The Clovis people didn't leave behind written words or grand monuments. Their legacy is etched in stone, in the elegant points they crafted, and scattered across a continent they were the first to call home. They are a testament to the enduring power of human adaptability, the unquenchable fire of our curiosity, and the fundamental drive to survive. Their world may be lost, but the lessons they offer are more relevant today than ever before. They remind us that our time here is also a fleeting chapter, and that our own survival depends on our ability to learn, adapt, and respect the world that sustains us. Thank you for joining me on this journey back to the Ice Age. The story of the Clovis people is a powerful part of our shared human heritage. If you found this reflection meaningful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations into our incredible past. Your support helps us continue to uncover and share these vital stories. Thanks for watching. Imagine, if you will, a world shrouded in ice. A world of colossal glaciers, stretching for miles, their icy breath shaping the very land beneath them. This was the landscape of the Americas thousands of years ago, a continent both formidable and full of promise. And into this vast, untamed wilderness stepped the first people, the pioneers of a new world. Their story isn't one of grand monuments or written epics, but of something far more intimate, far more profound. It's a story whispered from the earth itself, a tale told by silent, humble objects of stone. Today, we journey back in time, not to the clamor of great empires, but to the quiet, deep past. We're digging deeper than history books allow, into the very soil that holds the secrets of the first great human adventure in the Americas. What drove these early explorers? What challenges did they face? The answers lie buried, waiting under the quiet earth. For decades, the dominant theory was a straightforward one. The Clovis people, identified by their distinctively fluted spear points, were the first to arrive around 13,000 years ago. They were seen as mighty hunters, sweeping across the continent, their arrival coinciding with the extinction of megafauna like the mammoth and mastodon. The Clovis first model was neat, tidy, and for a long time, it was the accepted truth. Every new discovery was measured against it. Any site that hinted at an earlier human presence was met with intense scrutiny. Often dismissed as a misinterpretation of natural processes or flawed dating, it was a scientific dogma, a wall of certainty that seemed almost as impenetrable as the ice sheets those first people navigated. But science, in its truest form, is a story of constant questioning. And slowly, whispers of dissent began to emerge from scattered archaeological sites across North and South America. Whispers that suggested the story was far more complex, far older than we ever imagined. One of the most significant of these whispers came from a place called Monte Verde, deep in southern Chile. Here, in the 1970s, archaeologist Tom Dillahay and his team uncovered something extraordinary. Preserved in a waterlogged peat bog were not just stone tools, but organic remains. Fragments of wooden huts, pieces of ID, even a child's footprint. The preservation was astonishing, offering a snapshot of daily life frozen in time. But the most shocking discovery was the age. Radiocarbon dating placed the settlement at 14,500 years old, a full millennium before the Clovis people were thought to have arrived. The implications were staggering. If people were living this far south, 14,500 years ago, they must have entered the Americas much, much earlier. The ice-free corridor, a proposed route between the great ice sheets that was central to the Clovis first model, wouldn't even have been open yet. The scientific community was thrown into an uproar. For years, the findings from Monte Verde were fiercely debated. It took a panel of leading archaeologists visiting the site in 1997 to finally confirm its validity. The wall of Clovis first had been breached. The door was now open to re-examine other controversial sites, places like the Metacroft Rock Shelter in Pennsylvania, which had long yielded dates pointing to a pre-Clovis occupation, were given new consideration. And then came the Galt site in central Texas. Galt is not a subtle site. It's an archaeological treasure trove. Imagine a place so rich in artifacts that it's been called a Paleo-Indian supermarket. For generations, collectors had walked its fields, picking up countless Clovis points. But when archaeologists began to dig systematically, they found something deeper. Below the rich Clovis layer, they found another, older layer. And in this layer were different kinds of tools, smaller, more delicate projectile points, strange incised stones with geometric markings, and a distinct toolkit that was clearly not Clovis. These artifacts were dated to be between 16,000 and 20,000 years old. Here was undeniable proof, not just of a pre-Clovis presence, but of a thriving, technologically sophisticated culture that existed long before the one we thought was first. What do these older tools tell us? They paint a picture of a people who were not just big game hunters. They were adaptable generalists. Their toolkit included not just spear points, but blades for processing plants, scrapers for working hides, and gravers for carving bone and wood. They were intimately familiar with their local environments, utilizing a wide range of resources. The incised stones from Galt are particularly fascinating. These aren't just random scratches. They are deliberate, patterned engravings. Are they art? A form of counting? A map? We may never know, for sure, but they offer a tantalizing glimpse into the cognitive and symbolic world of these ancient people. They remind us that they were not just surviving, they were thinking, creating, and communicating. And the discoveries keep pushing the timeline back. At the Cerruti Mastodon site in California, researchers found mastodon bones that appear to have been deliberately broken with stone tools. The date, a mind-boggling 130,000 years ago. This finding is still highly controversial, as it would completely rewrite our understanding of human migration. But it forces us to keep an open mind, to question our assumptions, and to recognize that the story of the Americas is still being written, or rather, unearthed. So, who were these first people? And how did they get here? With the ice-free corridor likely closed, the focus has shifted to a coastal migration route. The theory suggests that these early explorers were maritime people, traveling down the Pacific coast in small watercraft, hopping from one resource-rich pocket to another along a coastline now submerged by rising sea levels. They were masters of the sea and the shore, living off fish, shellfish, sea mammals, and coastal plants. This would explain how they could bypass the massive ice sheets and populate the continent so rapidly, reaching southern Chile by 14,500 years ago. It's a beautiful, compelling image. Families navigating kelp forests, their lives tied to the rhythm of the tides, their world a shifting boundary between land and sea. This coastal highway, Nalosto, was their gateway to a new world. Think about the sheer courage it took to leave the familiar world behind and venture into a land of unknown plants, animals, and landscapes, to push forward, generation after generation, driven by curiosity, by necessity, by the universal human desire to see what lies over the next horizon. This wasn't a single event, but a process that likely unfolded over thousands of years, with waves of people bringing new ideas and technologies. The story is no longer a simple one of a single group of hunters, but a complex tapestry woven from many different threads. It's a story of resilience, of ingenuity, and of a deep connection to the land. Each tool, pulled from the earth, is a tangible link to these ancestors. Holding one in your hand, you can almost feel the presence of the person who made it. You can imagine the careful, practiced motions required to nap a piece of flint into a razor-sharp point. You can sense the purpose behind its creation, to feed a family, to protect a community, to make life possible in a challenging world. And now, we return to that quiet earth, to the layers of soil that have held these stories for so long. Beneath our feet, in fields, by riverbanks, and along ancient shorelines, millions of these artifacts still lie buried. Each one is a chapter in a book we are only just beginning to learn how to read. They are the silent witnesses, while empires rose and fell, while languages were born and died, while the very stars in the sky shifted their positions. These simple objects of stone remained. They lay in a patient, timeless slumber, cradled in the ancient soil. They are untouched, unmoved, holding within them the memory of cold, clear mornings, the smell of wood smoke, the sounds of a language we will never hear. They are the physical remnants of the first great adventure in the Americas. They don't shout their stories. They whisper. They speak of a past that is not truly gone, but simply waiting for a careful hand to brush away the dust of millennia. As we stand here, in the present, the past is all around us, breathing softly, like the wind blowing through the long grass, carrying echoes of a time beyond memory. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the deep past. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations into our shared human story. We have so much more to uncover together. See you next time.